I have been firing on lately. I've been pissed off. Welcome to the Patron Contributor Appreciation Soapbox Special with Mrs. Thomas. Welcome to the Soapbox. I have been ornery lately. When I think about it, that guy was right. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. I am here with my lovely wife, Mrs. Thomas. What's going on?
Nothing.
Not much?
Nope. Just Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. You know, it's funny.
Oh, wait.
Sunday
Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
All right. So Sundays have more significance to me now because I work all week. And so my weekend
So a weekend
matters
really
more.
does mean something now.
Yeah. You know, beforehand, you know, when I just ran the show by itself, I would have, I would work nearly every day. But the days I didn't necessarily want to do anything, I just didn't do anything. It was kind of an option. There are days you don't necessarily feel well, all the sorts of reasons. But now it's like it's a regular schedule. And the moment that I get that show put live, I can't wait. Because whatever I do on my job gets pushed through my regular channel at the exact same time. Meaning from 12 to 2 every day, you would get a show called Political Misfits, and you'll be able to call into that show. You'll be encouraged to call into that show to give your opinion. On Fridays on that show, there's going to be a segment called Come At Me, Bro. Come At Me, Bro.
Is that every day or just Fridays?
Just Fridays.
Okay.
Essentially, people can call in and debate. It's something, you know, I disagree with you on this point, and you can try to take the piss out of me.
Because sometimes here, when we have contributor appreciation, people say, when can we do call-ins? And so
Right.
You'll have the opportunity to call in to do that on Fridays. But they can call in
Every
to
day.
the show regularly.
Yeah, you can call in every day.
But not specifically for that segment.
Exactly.
That's just on Fridays.
So we are looking forward to it. I am really hoping people tune in. It will be from 12 to 2. Stay tuned for when we can get that show started.
Adam Bell says, I definitely will come at you, bro.
Uh-oh.
He's the one that said you've been fiery and ornery. Oh, Wendy Melly says, love your shirt. I didn't even think about it. I just grabbed this thing and put it on, but you're wearing your Bernie shirt.
Well, I'm wearing my Bernie shirt because Iowa is tomorrow.
Feeling the burn.
Iowa is
Maybe
tomorrow.
I'll pop in tomorrow. I have another Bernie shirt. Can I come in tomorrow?
Of course, if you want to. I want to cover the Iowa results because Sanders in Iowa has not just surged, but look at this. 24.7 to 21. He's taken the lead over Biden. Look at the last few polls. 28 to 15. 25 to 25. And Sanders usually does bad in YouGov polls. 30 to 21. Effectively.
We can't see this.
Oh.
We can't see this poll.
Damn
Bear
it.
with us, guys. Sorry.
Here we are. Yeah. He is getting crushed. So the question becomes, what happens in Iowa? And Iowa is going to be something that we're going to talk about later in the show because Iowa has a strange polling. What they're going to do in the polls this year is basically give you the raw result. And they're going to give you this kind of transition result, and they're going to give you the final delegate result. Sanders is like, I'm going to, if I get the original result, we're going to trumpet that as a win.
Yeah.
Other campaigns are like, whoa, the end result is the win. Because what those other campaigns know is that if your delegate, if your candidate doesn't get 15%, those people can go to another campaign. So there's going to be this secondary process of getting those results. Meaning a candidate could come out with a raw result that has them in the lead, and then after all of the shuffling goes around, that candidate could end up in second place. So and this is why the other campaigns are complaining about this, because they know that they're probably going to lose the first result, but with the shuffling, they have a chance of catching Sanders in that lead.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about like Klobuchar supporters or, Klobuchar, who's the other one? Warren. I mean, maybe Warren supporters. It depends on how much Warren gets. But Buttigieg, Yang, all of these people, Buttigieg actually may do well in this and get delegates. So, again, it depends on what that shuffle is going to look like. But if Buttigieg doesn't get 15%, his people can go, and they will probably go to either Biden or Warren. It gets messy in the way that the stuff gets shuffled around.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that ends up. But the end delegate thing is the thing that matters. Hopefully Sanders wins all of it, so none of the stuff matters. Like that, it's just a crushing defeat to the point of your shuffling doesn't matter, bro. I got my votes. This stuff. Now, I've been ornery lately, and I guess that's true. I think the orneriness has more to do with me feeling like they're trying to shaft my guy. That's all. And I don't like the candidates lying about stuff. It aggravates the shit out of me. When Joe Biden stands in front of a black person, looks them dead in the eye, shakes their hand, and say, I was a part of the civil rights movement. And then walks away. And nobody says, wait a minute.
Can we talk about this?
You didn't hear that?
No, like somebody needs to stop him.
Yeah, somebody needs to stop him.
We need to discuss some things.
That's horrible. How do you do that? Joe Biden is the type of guy that will be in the elevator, just you and him. He will cut one, and he'd look you in the eye and say, did you do that? That's the type of guy Joe Biden is. Because, see, if you could stand on that stage and look black people in the face and lie that flagrantly, and just casually lie. I'd never paid attention to Joe Biden in the previous years. Because he wasn't, this was kind of not within my political window.
But he got, he backed out of presidential races before.
Yes.
For lying. Like, you might not have paid attention to it, but that's what happened the last time. Yeah, plagiarizing and fucking
but he, I know people say, oh, God, Trump lies so easily. And Trump does lie. Trump flagrantly lies. But Biden does, too. And Biden would do it yeah, I was part of the civil rights movement. Bang. Or Joe Bernie's lying about my record on Social Security and I demand an apology. And walk out the door.
Well, too, I think because not everybody likes Joe. I think he's creepy Uncle Joe. But because he's a little bit more charismatic than Trump is, he's more believable when he lies. Like, when he lies, people don't just go, oh, he's lying. When Trump lies, people just go, oh, he's lying. But when Biden lies, they're like, they don't really question.
I think part of it is they give Democrats the benefit of the doubt in general. They just do.
They lie too?
Yeah, well, yes, they lie too. I mean, and not just they lie too. It's the type of lies, right? I don't want to have to do a comparison between who's a bigger liar if both guys are liars. If you understand my point. Joe Biden lying about Social Security. Joe Biden lying about his Iraq war vote. Joe Biden lying. He's gotten to the point where he's handing out pamphlets to explain his record on Social Security so he doesn't have to talk. Have you seen that? Did I show you that? He's walking, somebody says, Joe Biden, what's your record on Social Security? And Joe Biden comes back and gives the guy a pamphlet. He says, here, I just wanted you to, so you could just read it. Why? Why is he doing that? Because there's a 17-point swing of support between, I think it was 50 to 64 age demographic, a demographic that was firmly with Joe Biden over to Sanders. He lost that argument on Social Security. He did that hit video, and Sanders made his hit video that had Joe Biden saying it, meaning the public got to see, A, Joe Biden did want to cut Social Security, and B, he was lying about it.
Right. It's like, I never said that.
Yes, you did. Tape. Right.
What does he say? Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. It's almost like he doesn't realize he's on camera. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I said those things, but nobody recorded me saying those things, so everything is okay. And he was a surly asshole about it, too. Joe Biden was working with out-and-out, singing in the daylight, running through the lilies, racists. To put black people in prison and to end to block integration efforts.
Right.
He's in front of a black church. I think I have a right to be honorary about that. That bugs me. As an African American, that bugs me. That you have an opportunity to put somebody in that will materially benefit you and your kind. And not just benefit you and your kind, but fucking marching with Martin Luther King. Shouldn't that matter? Shouldn't a certain degree of integrity and history matter? I don't understand why blacks are voting for him. God damn it, I honestly don't. Black folks can't raise their kids. We need to send government workers to their house. What? And then Sanders doesn't do a video on that. Sanders doesn't do a video on his history within the context of the black community. He doesn't do any of that. He allows Joe Biden to make that argument to black folks. Him on that. Yes, you should hit him on that. Not hit him on it to be mean-spirited, but you hit him on it because he is lying.
He's lying.
It's because he's lying.
All right, let's...
Yes, that makes me ornery.
Okay, let's go, because you have a lot on your list, and I have a lot on mine. All right. So, wait.
So, give your
I got to do my spiel.
Yes.
All right, so this is Sunday. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Somebody said that they're more excited for Iowa Monday than they are for Super Bowl Sunday. Do you agree?
Dramatically so, yes.
Okay.
I didn't even know the
All
Super Bowl was today.
Well, clearly,
so,
yeah, we found that out a couple minutes ago. So, today is Super Bowl Sunday, but it's also Contributor Appreciation Day. If you did not know, once a week here on the Progressive Soapbox, Jamal does a special show for
the contributors,
the supporters, Maybe it should be supporter appreciation, because it's not just people who contribute to the channel, but it's everyone. Wait, I'm doing my spiel, okay?
Tell them to like and share this video.
I have one job.
Tell them to share this video.
Let me do my spiel.
Okay, but tell them to share.
Okay, let me do my spiel, and it will include that.
Do your spiel, baby.
Okay. All right. So once a week, Jamal does a show where he uses the content topics that you guys suggest to fuel today's show. So every week we put a post on the Patreon platform so patrons can go on and say this is what we want to hear on the show. And so we pull those topics and other things that you guys have been talking about through the week, and we discuss those today on Contribute Appreciation. Read all your chats, have good conversation, all that good stuff. So thank you to everyone who contributes monetarily, whether it be through Patreon, Super Chat, Streamlabs, PayPal. We need to get an updated P.O. box, so we will let you know when that happens now that we've moved. But then also, if you're not contributing monetarily, we get it. Not everybody wants to, not everybody can. Just make sure that if you enjoy the content, that you give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed and you hit the bell notification icon, even though sometimes YouTube is a little wonkish and does not give those notifications. Like today, I didn't get one, but do it anyway. And if you like the video, like he said, give it a thumbs up and share it. Tell your mom and tell your friends. Come back again from...
Tweet it.
For next week.
I'm realizing that has to be said in videos. That helps, apparently. It's kind of like telling somebody to like the video at the end. Where it's like if you don't say it, people don't do it.
No, because I realized...
About the like thing.
It wasn't until you started doing YouTube in the very, very beginning that I actually started paying attention to, liking people's videos or watching a video all the way through. And how it helps the content creator. So also, if you don't know what Patreon is, it is a platform that allows you, the viewer, to say, hey, I want to make sure that this creator, which would be Jamal, can continue to create content. I'm going to support them and make a monetary contribution or commitment each month. And so you pledge $1, $2, $10, whatever you can, and it helps him to continue to do the YouTube content. And so that is Patreon. So if you're interested in that, the link is down in the description box below. But it is important for people on YouTube to say those things, like to give the video a thumbs up, because it helps him know what's doing well and what's not. And it lets you guys know everything that's going on. Adam Bell said he actually did tell his mama.
Go ahead.
She has a crush on Jamal, because I always say tell your mama, tell your friends.
Yeah.
So he said he told his mama.
Oh, thank you, Adam Bell.
All right.
I'll tell you this. When a campaign is doing well, and you can see it. Meaning when they're brimming with confidence, it shows. Or when they're not, deflated. Now, less about what they say and more about body language in those type of situations. Like, a campaign that's doing well doesn't change the recipe. So Elizabeth Warren with her bus, courage over cynicism. And it's like, what? What does that mean? Or saying she's going to get a trans person to choose her education secretary. And it's like, why? Why are you getting a trans kid to choose your secretary? Like, stuff like that. That's when it's like, all right, something's going on with that campaign. That campaign is a disaster. Or Joe Biden handed out pamphlets. Oh, that's a disaster. When a campaign is doing well, it shows. This is Sanders' campaign event.
Sandwich.
That's Nina Turner.
Oh, I know who it is.
And that's all of them dancing on stage. He had an event in Iowa that brought apparently more people than anyone else in any other campaign events in Iowa. It was like a concert. I think they call it Vampire Weekend. He is rocking out in Iowa. And as I showed you the polls earlier, this is real clear politics. He's taken the lead in the Iowa polls, 24.7. He's been expanding his lead. Buttigieg is all the way back at 16.3. If Sanders takes this in a blowout, which is very well possible for him to do, oh my God, What happens in Iowa does not stay in Iowa.
No.
It will be going all the way to New Hampshire and potentially to Nevada.
Somebody said there's 4,000 at the Iowa concert.
Yeah.
So something looks like spring break.
So, yeah, it does. You should have seen all those people in the crowds in the audience. And the event today, again, it's wrapped around the building. And so they pulled it outside so they could get everybody into the thing. If you want to see what popularity is, that's what popularity is. And it's not just me that recognized that. It's not just me that recognized that.
Yeah, I saw Cornel West too. Remember that time I met Cornel West?
Yeah. You didn't take my picture with Cornel West, so I'm still sore about that.
I don't remember
so let's
that.
not bring that
Can
up.
we block somebody in the
Yes.
chat?
Yeah.
This is annoying. I just can't see through everything. Like, I know how to block him on mine. But like, he's talking about people's feet, and now he's just doing that, and it's...
There you go.
Okay, he was in the way. Sorry. If you didn't know, I look at you guys' comments while Jamal is going through the show. There are a couple super chats. You want me to read those real quick?
Well, let me get this part first. And maybe we do need a moderator at some point. That'd be hard to do, but we can do it on the radio show, but it may be harder in person. We'll work it out. But people are clearly feeling the burn. For Hillary Clinton to be like, nobody likes him. Well, it seems like a hell of a lot of people like him in Iowa and New Hampshire. When he's blowing those two states out, he's opened up a 10-point lead in New Hampshire. In the latest California poll, he was up by like 8 or 13 or something, some insane amount. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Texas. But he's going up in these states in the national polling. He is either breaking even with Biden or leading Biden. Real clear politics, I'm curious when they're going to cut off some of the older polls and just deal with the most recent ones. Mm-hmm. But I'm not the only one who recognizes that you need a lot of people to support your person if you want to win, especially if you're trying to take down a sitting president. Bill Maher feeling the burn.
Well, due to a degree, do we want the progressive? I like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, but I feel mostly, or have said...
Come on, Bill. Come on, Bill.
Oh, man.
Come back, Bill. It didn't do this the first time I ran this. Come on.
I like that tie.
Somebody like Pete or Amy Klobuchar could win more easily. But I tell you why Bernie Sanders is attractive to me now? Because he's the only Democrat who, like Trump, has an army. Who, when it gets to this other level, he's got a bunch of badass motherfuckers who will get in the streets. Well,
he's got a bunch of badass motherfuckers that'll get in the streets. Bill Maher said, I am feeling the burn. Why are you feeling the burn? Because I think these other milquetoast motherfuckers don't have enough support to battle Trump in the election. He gets it.
Somebody said he's still voting for Biden.
No, he gets it.
You think he's voting for...
Sanders? I don't know who he's voting for, but he gets it.
Okay, he burned us a little bit.
Because look, Bill Maher, whatever you want to think of him, is terrified of Donald Trump. Terrified of Trump. If you remember, Trump brought a lawsuit against Bill Maher because Bill Maher made a joke saying he looked like a gorilla and had said that these were his parents. Funny joke. Now, Trump sued him saying that this was like a defamation of character or something. And so Bill Maher couldn't talk about it on the show. No, oh hell no, he didn't win that. They threw that out of court. But he was freaked out by that when Trump became the president. He hates Trump. He hates him. He gets up in the morning and wishes he gurgles in his own blood. Hates him. So the notion of looking at the candidates, and what he's saying is, all of these papers are talking about Sanders and his supporters. All of these papers are talking about Sanders supporters being disruptive. Now, this is not entirely true. All of the people have their supporters. Right. The catch is, the amount of support for Sanders is voluminous, especially on social media, considering that many of the people who are supporting him are younger. So when he's looking at what's being said, he's looking at all of these rallies and all of these crowds, and he's like, I don't see that with the other candidates.
The other candidates don't have that.
I don't see that. And I see Trump filling stadiums, which he is. In that Iowa, in that Iowa debate, he was filling a stadium. And Bill Maher looks at that and says, well, I want one army to go against the other army.
Right.
And if I have to lump in with the lefties, rips off and feel the burn shirt written on his chest. He hates Trump. Bill Maher is going to vote for anything that gets Trump out of office. What he is realizing, though, is, well, maybe this guy has a better chance. Maybe. having all of that support matters. Maybe filling up those stadiums matter. Maybe getting all of those individual donations from all of those particular parts. Even our military. But Sanders got more supporters in the military than the other candidates. And so it's like, he's looking at that. Rational human being says,
I need to go with the winning team.
Maybe I need to go with this guy. Maybe I need to go with this guy. So whatever he wants, his own predilection of voting for a particular person, he hates Trump. And in his head, I want to put up the best candidate to go against Trump. In the last video we had on Bill Maher, he brought up Hunter Biden. Now, he brought up Hunter Biden in the sense of, well, his point was, there was an article written by Zephyr Teachout saying Biden has a corruption problem. Biden does have a corruption problem. Now, Teachout didn't even go to Hunter Biden. Teachout didn't go to the other bills that Biden was passing when he had family members that would benefit from those bills. He didn't do any of that. She just went purely from this notion of him being bought and the policies that he was running with. Sanders put a knife in her. Bill Maher ran and said, there is nothing wrong with this article, and that is exactly what Trump would do, and this is a problem because of such. And he goes further into the Hunter. He was like, not to mention the Hunter Biden getting all of that money. Trump is going to wail on that. Bill Maher understands who's the weaker candidate. And so it's fucking fascinating watching him go through this kind of like trying to, grasp like, all right, I just want Trump out of office. That's what I want. And who gets me there?
That's your end game.
Right. Who gets me there? Who gets me there?
Yeah.
And he looks at Trump's rallies and he's like, fuck, man, look at all those people at those rallies. And I don't see that with anybody else but Sanders. And he's like, the policy proposals, the guy's been consistent. And like, it's this kind of working through, who do I think can take down Sanders? This is the electability argument playing out on TV. God, this is fascinating. This is fascinating.
Because that's all that Joe had.
That's all he has.
He's more electable. He's more electable. He's more electable. And now Bill Maher is saying, Bernie.
But here's the thing. Bill Maher would have never, ever went here if it wasn't for somebody bringing up, no, he's not more electable. He does have a corruption problem.
Was Bill Maher recently on Joe Rogan?
No. Who was on Joe Rogan recently? I'm not sure.
Okay, because somebody said something in the comments that sounded like they were saying how he switched his tone after going on Joe Rogan.
Now, I'm not sure. I mean, Joe Rogan,
I know that Bernie went on Joe Rogan, and they got like a bajillion views on it.
It was
but
insane.
I think the comment was, it sounded like he was saying he was on Joe Rogan. And since they're saying yes, he was on Joe Rogan. And somebody said since he was on Rogan's show, he's been feeling the burn a little bit. And they're like,
really?
Coincidence? I think not.
It might not be.
Because Joe Rogan's already endorsed Bernie, and then
he never said endorsed, but when he was asked about it, he was feeling the burn. Like, and I've heard Joe Rogan say some pretty progressive shit at times. He's like, if you don't think people should have health care, you're a hateful motherfucker, something like that.
Somebody
he
said he was a terrible guest. It was a terrible episode. Did you play the Bill Maher clip? He played it.
I played it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff.
I'm not saying the entire episode was great. I'm just saying
I'm talking about that little clip from the Bill Maher show. We did play it already.
We played that clip.
You got to rewind, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right.
And look, I'm not saying Bill Maher is an ally. So I'm not saying that. No. I'm just saying from that clip, and I didn't see the entire episode, but from that clip, it looks like he's going through his head of who beats Trump.
And he's rightfully so giving Bernie his props.
Yes.
That's all that we're saying about that clip.
Yeah. And
that's all that happened there.
You even can look at, the catch with media sometimes is that they're setting a narrative, not reporting a narrative. Two different things. When they're having these conversations about whatever they're talking about, impeachment is the most important thing in the world. This thing is the most important thing in the world. Iran is going to do this. When they're doing that, that is not the same thing that the public is all that much interested in. The public has their own material concerns. How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? Oh my God, my insurance has gone so high. Oh my God, my medical debt. How am I going to put my kid through school? I
have day-to-day stresses.
It's a list of stresses. Like, life shouldn't be that way. But life is not necessarily that way when you are tens of millions of dollars, which is, for the most part, all of the people who are reporting the news is. Their concerns are different than your concerns. Their material needs are met in many respects. Yours are not. So the things that they focus on and think about are not entirely the things that the masses think about. The stories that they're running with are creating a story to some degree, but that story doesn't necessarily correlate with what people care about. I hope you understand what I mean. It's a class issue. They're paid by billionaires to essentially tell you a particular message and a particular narrative. Oftentimes, that narrative is not getting to the root of what the public is concerned about. So you can run with this notion of, if nobody brings up income inequality, then it never comes up. Why? Because they don't care about that.
Yeah.
They don't want to put people in that's going to adversely affect their taxes. The stories that these guys run with are chosen. You have a list of things that happen, they choose, and they project the story. And oftentimes they're only giving you the government line from like stenographers who said, this government agent said this government agent said that. That's the news. You figure it out. The other alternative news channels, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but at the very least give you another perspective of events. The discrediting of media is warranted. Yeah. I mean, how much Trump lies, you've had a conspiracy theory for the last 3 years. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The last Syrian chemical weapons strike didn't take place, and they didn't even cover the leaks. And the people who were there on the ground, who comes out and said they were trying to intimidate us to implicate these guys, there was no chlorine attack. They didn't run that. I guess I'm saying they discredit themselves when they do stuff like that. Even the polling, when CNN would not put Bernie Sanders' name on the poll and put him in the other category, that's a discrediting act. So they have a point of view. The very act of calling yourself objective in this case is just an outright lie. When it's faced, there is no such thing as an objective human being. Objective from what point of view? And the very point when you say from what point of view, it means that you are working from a point of view. There's no such thing as objectivity in this stuff. It's nonsense. You are a human being with your own biases and everything else. And you look at the world in a particular way. As long as people understand that you are trying to be honest, truthful, authentic, all that stuff, that matters a hell of a lot more than trying to be quote unquote objective. Just tell me where you stand and tell me what happened. Don't lie to me to try to bring me over to your particular point of view, but at the very least acknowledge that you do have your own preconceptions of the world.
Yeah. I have super chats.
Go ahead. Let's do super chats.
All right. So these are not topic specific.
Go for it.
They're just kind of saying hello. But the first one for the day, it looks like was Uncle Brother. Uncle Brother says Aisha, #yes. He's a few minutes late, but he's here. I've always known Republicans suck. Now I consider being referred to as a Democrat an insult. So thank you for the super chat.
Same here.
Pop Reality didn't leave a comment, but did give a super chat. So thank you for that. And Carla Curley says, Jamal, listen to that girl, meaning me.
I am.
LOL says, thank you, sister, for your spiel. Good job. Thank you, Carla. And I think we had one more. No, it looks like that's it. Let me know if I missed one, guys.
So a guy stands up at a Biden rally and says,
why is he here?
No, he says, my wife left me and asked how do I get her back? He just stands up. He's Biden.
My wife left me.
He said, my wife left me. How do I get her back? And then the guy just wouldn't sit down. And when the guy wouldn't sit down, Biden said, yeah, I can kind of see why your wife left you.
Oh, that's mean.
That's funny. That's funny.
Biden's a bully.
That's funny. But look, my hypothesis is that Biden is a bit older. And his cognitive faculties are not necessarily as sharp as they used to be. And I know for myself, when I am tired, I am prickly. I just am. Like after treatments, it feels like you've run a marathon and whatnot.
I'm your spouse.
It tends to be a bit, it's like your temper is shorter, your patience is less. And I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a guy who, for the most part, thought he was going to win this, didn't think he was going to have this much competition.
He didn't think he was going to have to really work for it.
And now it's slipping away.
Right.
It's slipping away.
Just like
and as it slips away, abilities, yeah.
So.
And so he's, he gets prickly. He gets angry at people in these kind of uncontrolled shows of rage. I would just make the point to you that if the guy is doing that, then you shouldn't have him running in the general election. He will blow it. I mean, Biden is going to get hit on his Social Security cuts. He's going to get hit on Hunter Biden. He's going to get hit on this notion of corruption. All of this stuff is going to come up. He's going to get hit on this crime bill. Trump is going to say, I'm letting black people out of prison while you were working with racists to put them in. He will say that. All of these things are attack points. If I was working on the Trump team, I would hit Biden on each and every one of those points. And I would be making video after video after video attacking him on those things. Now, you can say, well, dude, they're going to hit Sanders too. Yes, they will hit Sanders too, but what are they going to hit him on? Oh, he's a socialist. Oh, he wants to give immigrants health care. Oh, he wants to open borders. These are going to be, those are different attacks. I hope you understand what I mean. Trump cannot have a fight on policy with Sanders. Both of these guys are supposed to be populists. Sanders is actually the real populist. He will lose that fight. Corruption, lying, all of those things coming to the forefront with Biden just doesn't come to the forefront with Sanders. I just think Biden is a weaker candidate going against Trump.
Yeah. Somebody said he's not presidential. Can I do one comment before you do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Just an announcement. I see this, or not an announcement. That was a little dramatic. But Black Sheep Theory says, just a reminder, tomorrow is the last day to register to vote in the primary if you live in a Super Tuesday state.
Good to know.
Like Texas. So thank you for that. He said he's going to spam that. And so please don't block him.
No, spam it.
But I saw that pop up. So don't forget to register.
To vote.
To register to vote.
Also, Maryland, we live in a legal state. Pot legal. I can get my medical card. Because I have kidney failure, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get that card. And so I can be like, bam.
Oh, speaking of kidney failure, somebody said, are you okay because you lost weight? He's lost weight intentionally.
Yeah, that was intentional.
Plus, when he shaves, it takes off a couple pounds, too.
No, that was intentional. When we got back from traveling, my weight had dropped to like 80 kilos, 79 kilos. And so, great with that particular weight. Here's the catch. When you're traveling, you're moving constantly. Like you're walking, you don't have a car. In Poland, it was like, 10 degrees with snow on the ground every day. And so you're moving through that, like walking blocks to get from point A to point B. Same thing in Germany.
When you're traveling, you're more mobile.
You're more mobile, right. You're moving constantly. And so you lose weight. And so when I got back home, well, it was great. Within that month, I think I put on 10 pounds. Because at that point, you're in a one-story house. You have a car anywhere you need to go. It's just a little weird being
and you
back.
Don't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It gets very weird when you get back. And so going through the course of the year, I wanted to lose weight. At my highest point when I think it was like 14 or 15, I had gotten up to 260 pounds. So I am pretty mindful of any kind of like weird weight gain. No, it was intentional.
Now me, on the other hand, I have put on 40 pounds since we've been back. And
really?
I'm still eating like nothing's going on. I'm trying to get it together. I want to come and you guys be like, Aisha, you lost a lot of weight. Do you look okay? That's what I'm hoping for 2020, for somebody to ask me, am I sick because I've lost so much weight?
Nah, it was intentional. B vitamins, hawthorn berries,
wait, before
garlic.
You go, Trudy says, would you pull over if Chris Matthews was laying in the road bleeding?
Yes.
Would you pull over and help him?
Of course.
And
by the way, but Trudy is saying that because Chris Matthews made some comment talking about
Did he call you out?
He wouldn't believe Bernie Sanders would stop to help somebody if they were on the road dying.
Fuck that.
Now, here's the catch. Bernie Sanders saved a woman that was about to get hit by a car, pushed her out the way, and then kept going, not even to stay for the attention that he was going to get after for saving the woman's life.
I believe Bernie would... I believe that anybody with any...
Think about what he's saying.
Somewhat decent human being.
The guy who is trying to provide health care for each and every person in this country, free of charge or free at the point of service, is not going to somehow help somebody who's injured.
Bleeding out?
Think about what we're saying here.
That's a stupid thing to say.
Chris Matthews is a Hillary supporter, loves Hillary. They were gumming it up when they were doing that interview. You can't take these guys on face value. This is kind of my point. These guys are political actors. They have their own point of view of the world. When they ask a question, what question do you think, how do you think they're going to frame that question? Do you think that framing of the question tells you, to some degree, what they themselves are thinking about? Yeah. When you say, how are you going to pay for this plan, Sanders? And you can ask that question in another way. Look, healthcare costs is X amount, and we realize that this will cut down the amount of costs for healthcare. How are you going to implement? The question can be asked in so many different ways.
It's leading. Isn't that what they say?
It's a leading question. But it's leading with a framing. That's what I mean when I say that. So, it matters when they call it objectivity, their bias. Yeah. And especially if that bias is across the board, it matters when they say that particular bias is the position of objectivity. It's nonsense. And, part of the reason I love working at Sputnik is because I can say that's nonsense. The other networks don't do that. There's nobody else in the networks that do that, especially calling them on their BS. Sanders, day one, in the White House, we're going to be taking bong hits in the White House. Yes! And we're like an hour away. I'm going to be there at that celebration. Bernie Sanders pledges to legalize marijuana in all 50 states on day one as president.
Is that medical marijuana?
No.
That's just everything?
Everything. Day one. And he's going to let the people out of prison who got arrested for it.
Oh, okay.
Meaning he's going to expunge those records. Think about that. Like, think of all the people that are sitting in jail and prison. Think of all the money that they had to spend to get lawyers. Think of all the time it took the cop to lock the person up for taking a bong hit. Think of all of that money wasted putting stoners in prison. Do you realize how this started? Richard Nixon, in his campaign, the guy who used to work for Nixon, one of his hatchet men, came out and says, look, Nixon implemented the war on drugs to lock up blacks and hippies because he thought they were going to be a political force that could use against him. This war on drugs was entirely for political effect. They said, not only can we get these people arrested, which is probably going to mess with their record, meaning they're not going to be able to vote that easily. They looked at these people as being the demographic that was most likely to vote for the Democratic Party.
Right, take them out.
Take them out. And in taking them out, they can get on TV every day and say, look at that drug addict. Look at that druggie. Look at that druggie. That druggie was supporting that, candidate. Now, if you know that, which is true, everything I just said here is true, how do you maintain this war on pot? Like, the moment
you decriminalize it.
The moment that comes out, it should be how do you say we started this not because there was a public need for it, not because there was anything necessarily that was going wrong, but entirely for political effect to lock up African Americans and hippies in order to injure the other party because we know that was one of their bases of support. That's fucking insane. But Obama, black, pot smoker, he was a flagrant pot smoker.
He would have been, he couldn't do that as a black president. He was like, I'm the black guy. I can't legalize marijuana.
Why couldn't he legalize marijuana? No, explain to me. Why not? I mean...
Oh, I don't have a reason for you. I mean, I'm thinking that if they're trying to rationalize why he can't, that's one of the things that they...
Then he should have never been elected. Honestly, if you can't, as president of... I'm sorry. Donald Trump being president of the United States has changed my point of view on all of that. I might have agreed with you in the last term, but not now.
No,
Trump has broken so many norms. Exactly.
He wants
and the political space conforms to him.
Right.
So it's not like the president can't do this because of something. No, that's in your head. Obama could have done that. The political space would have just conformed to that decision.
Yeah.
This notion of saying, the black president did X or the black president, mainstream media would not have necessarily ran that. Fox might have ran that, but they call him a Kenyan Muslim, made the man give his birth certificate. What does it matter?
He's not a progressive. He wasn't progressive.
I know. I'm making the point, though, that it's a betrayal of what he was. And this should have been something that should have been on his agenda. Well, Sanders, bong hits on the White House lawn.
Day one.
I hope Sanders, after passing the legislation or changing, it's not even going to be legislation, he's probably going to change the scheduling of the drug to make it legal. I hope he comes out, standing beside Jane, he pulls out his bong.
He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that.
You don't know, man.
I know that. I will give you a whole paycheck if he does that on the first time.
What do you think they'll do if he did that? Nothing. They won't do nothing.
That doesn't mean that he's gonna do it.
They would moan. They were like, the stoner.
That'll be all over the news.
That would be all over the news. But what do you think the population would think about it? Do you think they would look at that? He's doing a celebration bong hit to put a stamp on the fact that we won on this issue. Because that's a big deal. Like, think about the policy that's been in place for 50 years.
I get it.
And he gets in office
he's not doing a bong hit in the White House lawn.
He gets rid of the policy. That means there's no half measure. Lefties on this issue just win outright. Why wouldn't you put a stamp on that? Yeah, I want all media attention around the world. They'd be reporting in Africa and bong hits on the White House lawn.
Oh, that's so fucking racist.
They'll be in France and Spain and all of these places saying the President of the United States in order to instantiate his win to get this drug decriminalized has just taken a bong hit on the White House lawn with a series of other people, hundreds of thousands out there with him.
He's not going to do that. Can we move on to the next story? Yes, this is good. That'll be awesome. I hope he gets elected. Feel the Bern, Bernie 2020.
We need to start a hashtag.
But
Bernie bong
hits on
White House.
the White House lawn.
Yeah. We need to get that. We need to get that petition started.
Golden Silence says you're racist. Yeah, he does some racist shit sometimes. He does some racist shit.
That's not racist.
Some fucking African cliques or something. I don't know what that just was.
No, you do know that there are African tribes that talk in cliques.
I'm ashamed.
You do. I mean, that's true. There are African tribes that speak in cliques.
You can't even get it out right.
My mouth is kind of dry, but everything I just said is true. There are African tribes that speak in cliques. I may not get the cliques right, so fair enough. But that's like me mocking, I don't know, people like, Italians waving with their hands and people kind of make that gesture.
I know, but even that could be considered a little racist. But you just did the cliques. You just mocked the African cliques.
I don't know how it's mocking if it do speak in cliques.
All right, let me do the other super chats before you go on.
Okay. Let's see.
Steve Jacob says, I'm a Republican and my other party are Republicans. So thank you. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Adam Bell says, should I keep my LA primary vote or switch to Wisconsin? What's WI?
What? What do you mean?
Should I keep my LA primary vote?
Or switch to Wisconsin? I don't know what that means. How do you switch to Wisconsin?
What is WI? Is that not Wisconsin?
No, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, does he live in 2 states?
I don't know, Adam Bell. What are you talking about, dude? There's another super chat. Hold on, let me get down there. Brent McKinney says, another great Jesus story? Luke 10, 25 to 37. I don't know what that is, Brent.
Speaking about the election, let's go to Iowa for the moment. So...
he says, I live in Wisconsin now, but I'm registered in L.A.
Well, we have the same problem. Because we live in, Maryland now, just because we just moved up here. But we're registered in Virginia.
I don't know if we can advise you on that one.
Yeah. We're either going to have to drive back or we have to make the vote here. Which means driver license change and all that other stuff. We got to take the driver license test. It's just, yeah. But let's talk about Iowa for the moment. So Iowa has changed their rules based on what took place in 2016. In 2016, Sanders took, I think it was 49.6%. Hillary took 49.8%. And lefties complain that, well, wait a minute, you're showing us the final delegate count. We want to see the process. Because in Iowa, if you don't get 15% of the vote total, that group can move on to somebody else. So if you are part of Yang Gang, Yang gets 8%. Those 8% can say, all right, we're going to lump in with Sanders. Or if you're part of Warren's camp, you could say, all right, I'm going to lump in with Sanders, providing she doesn't get the 15%. Or if you're Klobuchar or Buttigieg, you can say, I'm going to lump in with Joe Biden. Essentially, it allows people to move because it's a caucus. They're trying to make a decision on who, and they kind of make this collaborative decision where you take hours and hours and hours to do this. Now, the catch here is Joe Biden is somewhat at a weakness in this because many of the people who are going there tend to be younger. And if your demographic is, 64 to 100, they're going to be less likely to be spirited enough to get themselves to the Iowa race. Whereas Sanders supporters can be in the middle of a Borg attack with Jean-Luc Picard injured, and they could be sheared with the nanobots going through their body, and they would still drag themselves just before their consciousness leaves their body and become a Borg to hit the button to make that vote for Sanders. You could be there.
Is this in the response to what the person said?
Yeah.
Wait, I have to read that.
You like how I slid that in, right? She's impressed by that.
She's not.
She's totally impressed by that. She's like, God, that's so fucking sexy that he can just bring up Star Trek shit like that.
Actually, this is in response to a patron's topic. Vortex said, I love when you create a narrative to explain how unwavering Sanders supporters are when it comes to voting for their guy, bleeding on the flag. He says, can you think of a Star Trek analogy that accurately expresses us Bernie supporters and our situations?
I like that.
So, Vortex, this one's for you, buddy.
This one's for you, bud. So think of it this way. Right now, because of the lefties complaining about the 2016 result, they've decided to show the various election results. So they're going to give you the raw vote, meaning what's the just first total of people making their choice. They're also going to give you like the second round vote, and they're going to give you the final delegate total. Now, Sanders' camp said, if we win the raw vote, we're going to tout that as a victory.
Right.
Now, the other camps were like, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't want you touting that as victory. You're going to confuse the population. Now, I'm enamored by this. Last year in 2016, 4 years ago, 2016, we made the exact same argument that polling results, but also media has an influence on public's perspective. Meaning, if you're showing election results that has a candidate really far in the lead, it makes people think, well, this is the candidate that's most likely to win. And unfortunately, people have this odd tendency of just going along with that particular candidate. I've had the guy who I was working with, he was like, oh, Bernie Sanders has no chance to win. Now, he would have voted for Sanders if he thought he had a chance to win. But in this case, he was like, oh, the support is with Clinton. So I'm going to, go with Clinton. It's not just giving you information. As a human being, you're not just receiving information. The information is going to do something to you in one way or the other. It matters what that information is. And they know that for the most part, showing polls that show a particular person far ahead influences the individuals who they're showing that polls to. It shows a certain degree of support. It shows a strong campaign. People want to look strong. They want to look like there's massive amounts of support. And if you're showing a poll that doesn't look that way, it makes it look like it's not as strong as they claim. But now they're saying, whoa, we don't want you to scream about these election results. Now, here's the thing. To me, the election results that matters is the final delegate count. I do like the transparency, though, where I could see what was the original vote.
Right.
I definitely want to see that. And, what's the second round vote? I don't think this is a negative per se. I think the issue here is they don't want Sanders screaming that this is a win if they lose the vote total at the end of the delegate result. Hopefully, Sanders just runs away with it. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, the polling is showing a trend of him spiking.
Yeah.
Like, not just a gradual, spiking upward. And if that trend holds out, I mean, that trend has been going on for about a week now, like a week strong, poll after poll after poll after poll after poll, him taking the lead. So if he's going into that like that, that's a good thing. Yeah. I mean, I would rather be there than not. The catch becomes the second round people. And that's the part where it gets dicey. I mean, you have Tom Steyer, you have Amy Klobuchar, you have Pete Buttigieg, you have Andrew Yang. I don't know, I think Tulsi Gabbard is still in it. So you have all of these groups. And then the question becomes, how much are these groups pulling? Who do they go to in the second round vote? Because Sanders could win the first vote by a pretty decent margin, but at the end of it, either tie or lose based on all of these other candidates and their people who they're flowing to. So it's unclear. I just hope he blows them out of the water.
Right.
Where
No
there's no questions. There's no questions. Here's the other catch. If this was Joe Biden's campaign would have done the exact same thing about touting a victory in the first raw vote. They're complaining about it because they know they're probably going to lose the first raw vote. That's why, otherwise, none of this would have come up.
Right.
I mean, the whole DNC thing, they changed the rules to allow Bloomberg to get into the goddamn race. Bloomberg gave them, $350,000 or $250,000? And then the rules changed. The exact same rules that they used to exclude Tulsi, Marianne Williamson, what's the other guy's name? Cory Booker. All of these other people would have otherwise been in the race if it wasn't for the standards that the DNC put in. Those standards that they just got done away with. I mean, are you shitting me? Bloomberg's only point in this race is to stop Sanders. Their campaign had been very clear. If Sanders looks like he's going to run away with it, Joe Biden can't carry the burden, I'm going to jump in. The irony about this, the only person it hurts is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Meaning the guy who could potentially beat Sanders is Joe Biden. I still consider Joe Biden to be the most dangerous person in this race for Sanders. Bloomberg, however, is one of the weakest in coordination with Sanders. Because in my head, Joe Biden is kind of this creature of the Democratic Party, and you have this ideological fight between Sanders versus this kind of establishment person.
Yeah.
Bloomberg has gotten into the race almost saying, we can't trust the Democratic Party anymore. Meaning, I used to buy these people, and I can't trust that the people I'm buying is going to win. So I myself is going to just jump into the race now.
Now that's going to take people from Biden.
Correct. So he's not fighting in the first few states. He's jumping to like some other state and is spending a ton of money in that state. $250 million he spent in this race.
You think he's going to have a Super Bowl ad?
Yes, he will. He does.
He does have one?
He does have one.
Oh.
It's on gun control, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Because, that's the only issues he can talk about. Because he can't talk about criminal justice. He can't talk about health care. He can't talk about, like the issues he can't talk about. He makes ads on this other stuff and about Donald Trump. Look, but my only point is, in those next few states, this is going to eat into Biden's numbers. Now, the catch becomes, does Bloomberg get out the race if Biden wins the first 3 states? Let's say Biden has an over showing in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. Does Bloomberg look at this and say, okay, maybe he can carry the load. I don't have to do this. Because I think Bloomberg wouldn't be in this race if it wasn't for Joe Biden failing in this race. I prefer a race between Sanders and Bloomberg. Now, Sanders' entire campaign boils down to the billionaire class is fucking you over. It's interesting for him to be able to look at a billionaire that he doesn't like at all and make that argument. I want to see him, to some degree, rage out. I want to see him to be very pointed in his criticisms. In fact, I think he would be less pointed or more pointed in his criticisms of Bloomberg than he ever would be with Joe Biden. Like, he could say Biden is a friend of mine, and to partially mean it to some degree, I don't think he has that reservation with Bloomberg. He's made the point billionaires should not exist, and Bloomberg is a billionaire 50-something times over. So between the two, I think Bloomberg is weaker. I think the problem here, though, is if Bloomberg is taking delegates, and Biden is taking delegates, and Sanders is taking delegates, and Warren may take a few delegates, then it forces it to a second round, in which case you might have Sanders with more delegates, but with enough to force the vote to superdelegates. Now, the DNC operatives or people within the DNC has even been talking about bringing superdelegates back to the first round. They're floating that idea. All to stop Sanders. All of them are terrified that Sanders is going to take this because they know he potentially can take this. They're looking at this polling and they're like, what if the polling isn't accurate? What if it's worse? You know what I mean? Especially since he has a demographic that is hard to pin down from the standpoint of the polling results. We're going to know tomorrow how close this polls are to the real result. But because of the back and forth in Iowa like that, Iowa's results are going to look a little weird when they come out this year. Just keep in mind, first round results, they're going to show you it's like either second round or some kind of transition result in the final tally. And like I said, Sanders camp is going to tout a win on the raw result. Because to some degree, it is somewhat of a win.
Yeah.
These are who the people wanted the most with all of the votes if this was just a normal election. Meaning if we just went to the polls and voted, well, I won. But because Iowa has the results as a caucus,
right.
So I don't think it's insane that they tout that as a victory.
All right. Can you go to your YouTube channel, please? Because we need to block somebody from the chat.
Who?
Somebody's talking about killing Jews.
Where?
Danny is best. Danny is best somebody. Danny is the best, wins a lot.
Let's see.
Is that who you guys are talking about? Maybe next time I'll bring my laptop and I can do... Dan Alexander, we're not doing call-ins today.
But they will be on the show. I mean, so don't give up on wanting to call in.
Oh, okay. So while he's doing that, he's going to kind of go through and look at the chats while we're doing that. So while he's doing that, we've got about 440 people here. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you are enjoying the content. Today is Contributor Appreciation Show. Once a week, Jamal takes a show out to give the topics that you guys have specifically asked for. We put a post on the Patreon platform and ask patrons to give their topic suggestions, and we use those and the other topic suggestions that you've given throughout the week to fuel today's content. So thank you guys for being here. Yeah, you guys let me know. They're saying we should have a moderator. We can't do all that at one time.
Yeah,
but just let me know. I saw him say something, but he said something about a kosher lampshade. I don't know.
It's so weird to me that people do that, right? Like, it's flattering in one sense, weird
like
in
to
another
have a
sense.
troll to see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think about life as being productive. I mean, and I know that's just my own bias. There's no God makes a hammer. Well, God didn't make a hammer. A person made a hammer with the very specific interest of bashing in nails or attackers who are coming into the house unwanted. But a human being is different. A human being doesn't necessarily have a purpose in that way. It's radically free. Now, they're stuck in society. Don't misunderstand me. So their constraints are societal. But from the standpoint of the person, what they want to do, how they orient themselves, they're radically free to a point. Because that person is always instructed by whoever raised them in regards to society, culture, their own subculture they end up in, the parents, all that stuff. All this overlay of the person gets stuffed into this person. This person's run up. So it's almost like getting a program associated with it. But beyond that, you do what you want.
Yeah.
And there's no right, wrong, any of that stuff in the grand scheme of things. All of, right and wrong is determined by the society. You can make an argument for why you think something is wrong in the sense that, well, wait, it hurts us. We can't have a cohesive society if the people do this. That's true, but that's not the same thing as objectively wrong. It's wrong from a point of view. And I agree with the point of view, but I can't say that that's an absolute because it's not an absolute. I hope you understand what I mean.
Okay.
My point is this. Being radically free and having a finite amount of time on this planet, the individual believes that the best use of their time is to get on YouTube and just type stupid shit. I find that phenomenal. But look, people have all sorts of aspirations, right?
Also, don't forget that if someone says something that you don't like, you can always block them yourself. Corillian 316 says, I would pay to see Sanders light one up in the White House. Oh,
Me
wait,
too.
I already do. That's what he's giving his money to the campaign for. So I feel you on that one. There was another super chat, so let me read that before we go on. I think it was Brent McKinney says, is it true Warren asked you to be a chat moderator? That is not true.
No, that's not true. Asked me to be a chat moderator?
Yeah.
No. There's no way she would do that.
All right, so go ahead. I have one more thing to tie into what you were saying before, because you were talking about how so many people were excluded from the debates. Mm-hmm. Chris G says they wouldn't allow Cory Booker or Julian Castro. Is it Julian or Julian Castro? Julian Castro at the debates. Can you please discuss why? Even the leftish voices like Michael Moore pretend as if Tulsi Gabbard doesn't exist. He cited candidates of color who were excluded from the previous debate, but he only mentioned Booker and Castro, who have dropped out. Tulsi is not only supportive of Bernie, but she's still in the race. MSNBC, CNN, and other establishment sources smear Gabbard, and yet Moore, TYT, and other lefties not only don't defend her, but act as if she doesn't exist. Even Bernie squad never mentions her, aside from talking down to her about her impeachment vote. He says, I'm 100% voting for Bernie, but this boggles me every time there's a glaring omission of her existence. And that was from Patreon. So that kind of tied into what you were saying. So I just wanted you to touch on that.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I'm trying to find the Michael Moore speech where he brings that up. Michael Moore gives a fiery speech. He's
talking about like people of color that weren't allowed in the debates. And it's like, what about Tulsi?
Yeah, it's like, what about Tulsi? Because he has a point. In fact, I'll just bring it on my channel. Yeah, because the guy has a point. I mean, ultimately, all of these people of color... and I got to be honest, I don't like them doing that. African Americans had their choice. African Americans could have chose Booker. It could have chose Kamala Harris. It could have chose any of these people. And they didn't. Because they weren't looking for a person based on color. They were looking for a person based on policy. And the notion that you're going to try to force a black person down their throat or force an Indian down their throat, looking at you, Warren, is wrong. I mean, even from the standpoint of Yang, like, I don't like this notion that the public does get a choice. African Americans does get a choice. This is not like a corporation hiring somebody where two people make a choice on who's going to work in the entirety of their company. They're getting a choice. They weren't excluded from the vote total. They went out and said, yeah, we want him.
Yeah.
And that was Joe Biden. Now, it kills me that was Joe Biden, but I got to be honest, I wouldn't want them just randomly choosing a black person either. It's not about your color, dude. It's about the policies you're going to put into play. Obama was black. Obama was black. He gave 95% of the income gains to the top 1%. Explain to me why I'm better off choosing Obama against someone like a Sanders. I mean, it's nonsense.
Isn't that identity politics?
It's identity politics on steroids. And you know, you can make the argument. It's not that I'm bad on Michael Moore's argument. It's just he started with, you have all of these people of color that aren't on stage. The issue is not that you have people of color on stage. The issue is that you have human beings who wanted to be on that debate stage, who they excluded because they weren't making a standard. It has nothing to do with their color. It has everything to do with it just being wrong. I hope you understand, even if they were white, the same thing would apply to be true. I don't, why are you starting it off in that odd way? Blacks had a choice. They just didn't choose one of the black candidates. This is not a situation where they were excluded from choosing. This is literally a democratic process. And blacks have an outsized influence on vote totals. You can look at South Carolina, where Joe Biden is leading. At one point, Joe Biden had half of the black population support in South Carolina. That's mind-boggling. It's down to 30%, and that is the thing that's keeping him in the lead in South Carolina. My point is, they chose. And they have an outsized influence in the Democratic Party because of that choice. This was, let me see. I have the Michael Moore video where he's making the point about, damn it, I don't know where that video is. Let's see, maybe this. Oh, here we are. All right. So this is Michael Moore. Listen to this. Michael Moore brings the house down with this.
Where it says you have to have so many people donating to you. Otherwise, instead of 27 people on the stage, there'd be 227 people on the stage. So you had to have a certain number of Americans that would give you a buck. That's all the rule said. But it would to show that there's support. And that's how they determined who would be on that debate stage. Today, they removed that rule because Mike Bloomberg, the billionaire, the Republican mayor of New York City, they're backstage going, oh God, what's he going to say? They removed it so that he could be in the next debate. He doesn't have to show he has any support amongst the American people. He can just buy his way onto the debate stage. And I got to tell you what's so disgusting about this. I watched the debate in Iowa here 2 weeks ago. The all-white debate. And the fact that the DNC will not allow Cory Booker on that stage, will not allow Julian Castro on that stage, but they're going to allow Mike Bloomberg on the stage because he's got $1 billion fucking dollars.
Yes! Yes!
I like a good F-bomb every now and then.
Me too. I love that. He's fired up over that. Because what he knows is that you've eliminated all of these other people who could have been on that debate stage. And then you rip the rule away.
For fucking Bloomberg.
For Bloomberg. To allow Bloomberg to get into the debate.
Casual Thursday, you were right, because he can send a super chat saying he thinks that Michael Moore was talking about Bloomberg. But yeah.
He's talking about Bloomberg spending $1 billion fucking dollars. And so I feel his energy. The catch is, the name he didn't say was Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is also a person of color. I don't like the fact that he used the identity politics thing to make that argument, because there were other whites also that was left off the stage. All of those people have a right to run in this race, regardless of their color. And people get a choice on choosing who they want. If the black candidate didn't get the support from blacks, well, I'm sorry. You're not going to have a black president in perpetuity. And so it doesn't bother me that the stage is a canopy of whites when blacks got a choice on who those people were going to be.
And somebody said Tulsi opted out of the debate.
She did.
So they didn't necessarily exclude her.
Well, she opted out when she realized that the polling and everything wasn't going to give her what she needed to get into the debate. I mean, it was like the de facto thing, but yes, technically that's true. But still, their point is, you've had this standard with the polling for the entire time we've been here, and now you've removed the standard when all of these other people got out the race. That's the basic point.
Yeah.
Bloomberg has a very specific interest of being in the race to stop Sanders. His campaign has been very clear. Our job is to stop Sanders. Joe Biden can't carry the burden. We're going to carry the burden. And when they asked, hey, doesn't that hurt Joe Biden? They was like, if Joe Biden can't do well in the first 3 states, then, we're not hurting Joe Biden. Joe Biden is hurting himself. Like, there, no fucks.
Yeah.
No fucks. Buying. He's just buying it. It's not, nobody's clamoring for Bloomberg. He is buying this election. He's bought 10% with spending $250 million.
He is the only ad that I have seen on the little bit of TV that I watch. Like, we were watching CBS, and he came on a commercial. I was getting my nails done, and he came on a commercial. Bloomberg is the only ad that I've seen.
A YouTube commercial. I've seen a Steyer commercial.
Well, again, that's money.
Yeah, it's just cash. Like, if Sanders raises...
They don't need people behind them. They got the dollars.
Right. Sanders has to raise his money month after month after month after month, meaning that how he spends it has to be somewhat judiciously, even though he gets a pretty big penny, especially when something happens, people are doing things to lie or smear to attack him. But he has to earn that. Like, that's not something that he was bestowed with. And so when Bloomberg is running, Bloomberg doesn't have to earn anything. Bloomberg just writes a check.
Right.
And he can say, all right, I want 1,000 people in this state, in that state, in this state, in this state. He can just pay all of those people because he's a billionaire. Sanders has had volunteers and people on the ground who are fired up. You can see the differences in the way these campaigns are going to be run. One
Bloomberg
is just using
doesn't even
cash.
have a campaign. He doesn't have a campaign.
He doesn't. I mean, only thing he has to do is
checks.
say, all right, I'm going to write a check. I need you guys to run a presidential campaign for me. Go sit back in the room. That's all. I mean, he literally just is using cash to buy the race. That's utterly fucking disgusting. You have a billionaire in the White House. You have another billionaire who put in almost like $150 million in ads. You have Bloomberg, who put in $250 million in ads. Sanders, I think, was like at $20 million or $30 million. Like, and I think Buttigieg might have been a little bit higher. But, like, nowhere close.
Nowhere near.
Nowhere close.
Yeah.
Which forces every other campaign to up the amount that they were going to spend on ads because they don't have a relative equivalence anymore. Meaning, if there were no billionaires in the race, the highest amount might have been like $25 million. But because there are billionaires in the race and they're spending so much money, it forces the campaigns to somehow try to compete.
More.
Right. It forces them up and up and up in regards to their spending, meaning they need more for operations and all of these other things. It is atrocious to have these guys in the ring. And maybe the way to do it would be to create a rule that says, look, you can't use your own money to run the race. How about start there? You can't use your own money to start the race. If you're going to do it, you got to do it like everybody else. I mean, tell me, this is, I mean, am I insane? This does not seem fair to me.
Well, we know that's not fair.
It's like fucking buying an election. It's an oligarch buying an election.
Agree with you.
Yeah.
Wait. Before you leave from that, Marcus Will says you didn't answer the question from the
question?
Patreon. Why is that segment of the left such as Moore and even Chomsky
I
either
don't know.
smear or ignore Tulsi?
I have to be honest. I don't entirely know. This channel has not smeared or hit Tulsi. I've only hit her on things that I thought she was wrong on. And, you know, I made the point before that Tulsi stepped down to back Sanders, which for me gives her the benefit of the doubt in things that go on with her. Meaning she was willing to take a hit to back my guy when Elizabeth Warren, who was supposed to be ideologically close to my guy, would not do so. And she has courage on the side of her bus. Talk about ironic. On this very particular case, I am not sure, though, why there's so much animosity towards Gabbard. Because you have some Hillary supporters who just hate her outright.
But as far as progressives, she's not really a contender so I don't know why they would ignore her. You know what I mean? Like, she's not like running toe to toe with Bernie. So they're like, okay, well, we have to distinguish between the two. So I don't know about that.
I don't know if it's just they look at it as, well, she may get 2 and 3% in some of these elections, and those, it may be close margins. Like, let's say if in Iowa, Tulsi Gabbard gets 3%, that 3% is enough to essentially allow Biden to win. But, I mean, I don't know if that's enough of a reason to hate her on this front. I got to be honest, I don't entirely know. I don't know if it's the animosity with the Democratic Party, meaning you have some people who might be on the left who are still creatures of the party that hate her because of the back and forth with Clinton, or hate her because she stepped down. They sent a nasty letter to her after she stepped down and backed Sanders.
Yeah. Old Gringo says the undemocratic party.
The undemocratic party. So, I don't know. Maybe because she's an outsider with a war vote. I mean, her thing of, I want to stop these senseless wars, and I want to let that domestic policy go to domestic policy. Like, it's hard to know, but they do seem to have a certain animosity against her. And, like, a lot of it just seems unhinged. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, it does. She has come out recently and said something about Sanders because she knows that she's not going to get the 15% and her supporters are going to have to go somewhere. And she kind of gave a nod to Sanders in regards to those people going there. She hasn't abandoned him at no point. She's never attacked him on anything. So I don't know the animosity against her, especially somebody who was an ally for your cause in 2016.
Short answer, we don't know.
We don't know. I honestly don't know.
All right, so Lloyd Tucker says, Jamal, I hope you understand what I mean, Thomas. Just kidding. He says, love you, man. Could we have a people versus the DNC class action suit? Oh, crap. Hold on. Somebody just super chatted in and kicked that out the way. Hold on, Lloyd. I'm coming back. He says, could we have a people versus the DNC class action suit if they're caught cheating outside of their own rules?
Well, that's just it. I mean, that was the lawsuit that was filed last time with Jared Beck. Jared Beck filed the lawsuit, DNC fraud lawsuit. And apparently that's going to the Supreme Court now, I heard. Like, the case is still going on. He brought the case back in, and the case is going to the higher court. But my point is, Beck sued the DNC. Now, his point was, you defrauded all of the American public by cheating Sanders. And his main basic point was, if you're running in a race and you're telling me that this race is fair, it's impartial, this is the process, we're not messing with the process, we're not screwing around with it, whoever wins it, transparency, etc. Then, and I send you money because I think it's a fair process. And we find out that it wasn't a fair process, that the guy was cheated, that they were rigging the system. Well, you've defrauded me. Not only have you lied to me, I sent you money because of that specific lie. So you look at that and be like, well, yeah, that sounds like fraud. DNC is a corporation. That corporation had an election. During the course of that particular election, you had people sending money to that corporation and to the various candidates that were running in the race because you thought the race was fair. You find out it wasn't. You were lied to, and they were able to get that money from you based on that lie. That seems like fraud to me, and that seems illegal to me. Now, so Jared Beck brought the lawsuit. The DNC, for the most part, made the argument, we can pick a candidate in a smoke-filled room if we want to. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. And they are absolutely flat correct. Again, the DNC is a corporation. They're not part of a governmental system. The government is a bus. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party choose who's going to drive that bus. But don't mistake the parties for the governmental structures itself. If you understand my point, it's almost like they're just personnel finders. Well, in this case, the DNC could choose a candidate that way and say, yeah, we're not even going to have primaries. We're just going to pick this guy. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. Now, you may not vote for that guy. And part of the reason that they don't allow that is because ultimately you're in the situation of the public had no input on that candidate, and that candidate may just absolutely fail. Not just that, the public has no tethers to your particular party because the public had no input on that. Meaning you have a candidate that will most likely fail in the next process because the public wasn't necessarily a part of it. And at the end of the day, the public chooses. So you have this primary process to get the public and the people engaged, believing that they themselves made the choice. Whereas the party has its own specific point of view in regards to the various candidates who are running in the race. And in 2016, you saw them use that point of view to edge out one of the candidates. So that's the, wait a minute, this was on...
No, I was asking about somebody asked.
Oh, people versus the DNC, yeah. So this was his basic case. And the Democratic Party, that was their basic defense. We're a corporation, we can do whatever we want. We can, you can't impugn us for doing this. We don't have to tell the truth. We can pick a candidate and smoke for a room. We can lie, we can cheat, we can steal. We can do all that stuff. We're a corporation. Because this is an internal process, technically. You can even have a primary contest where you choose Sanders and the DNC says, all right, we're going to just pick this guy now, somebody else. They can do that if they vote it that way because it's a corporation. The political parties sometimes feel like they're part of the government, but they're not. They're not. It's just in this country, it is very difficult to start up a third party. The last one was the Whigs, Abraham Lincoln, becoming from the Whigs to the Republican Party.
All right, so before we leave from this, I'm trying to catch the super chats that are weighted to this. Jim Garrison said he likes Tulsi. She's my number 2.
I like Tulsi also.
All right, can you do the AP story first?
Yes.
And then I have a couple super chats.
All right. So this one is relatively quick. So the AP comes out with a story Sanders' Social Security adjustments undercut Biden's attack. And I looked at it like, what? The AP is running a story like this? It's flat wrong on its face. Think about what you're saying. The socialists wanted to cut Social Security. Now, let that soak in for the moment. I mean, the guy who calls himself a socialist wants to cut Social Security. It's like, I gotta see that. I gotta see what the words were, because that doesn't necessarily sit well with me, because it doesn't quite sound right. The Bloomberg journalist who used to worked for Bloomberg also ran a story like this, and she was demonstrably wrong. And when you look down at the very next tweet, the people voluminously tell her that you are wrong, give her evidence that she's wrong, in order to get across you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And number two, why is a person who's working at Bloomberg, that has the name of the article called Bloomberg, attacking other candidates with people working at Bloomberg, a candidate that's also running in the race? So essentially, they have attack dogs sitting other candidates from his own newspaper.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been honoring because shit like this is going on. This is just flat fact wrong. This is wrong. Sanders might have used the word adjustments, but it wasn't to cut Social Security. So, right here. This is 1996. This is what the article is referring to, or they're talking about this campaign. Right here. This is Sanders. It is absurd that he is talking about slashing important entitlements programs for those elderly and sick while leaving alone the what is that?
An unfair tax system which enables.
All right.
Want me to read it?
Yeah.
It's absurd for anyone to be talking about slashing important entitlement programs for the elderly and the sick while leaving alone an unfair tax system which enables millionaires to become richer at the expense of almost everyone else.
Sanders was not talking about cutting Social Security. Joe Biden was. And the fact that the AP will run a story like this, most people only look at the headline. But the fact they'd run a story like this, not thinking twice about it, or even if they did think twice about it, to just be absolutely incompetent and putting out a story that is just false. But the story doesn't even sound right on its face when you're hearing what Sanders is about and what he's been talking about for the last 30, 40 years. Black and white. He was never talking about cutting Social Security, and any adjustments that he was talking about was to raise it higher. Just saying.
Crappy work from AP.
Yes.
Let me go through Super Chats?
Yeah, go for Super Chats.
All right, Marcus Will says, so how much credibility do people like Noam or Maher have being at the front of the anti-war left? Also considering that Noam and Maher have achieved nothing.
Oh, wow.
Next Super Chat.
Well, wait a minute. Maher has done really good work in regards to videos and stuff like that. I mean, films and whatnot. I mean, I don't know what he's going to achieve. He's not in politics in the sense of running a campaign. I mean, he's just a surrogate.
He's being a voice.
Yeah, he's being a voice. Yeah. And I got to be honest, that video is fiery like nobody's business. Like, he is fired up. Because I think Maher knows what I know. He's buying the race. Like
Bloomberg.
I mean, look, it looks like for the longest time, the Democratic Party, for the most part, was owned by the same people who own the Republican Party. The Democrats would just make the argument of we're least worse. They'll leave economics alone, and they'll talk about identity politics. So they would say we're fighting for blacks and gays and trans and straights, and let's break these groups up and let's fight for these groups. When the real things that matter to those groups are material, not just identity stuff.
Right.
Yes, you should represent every identity, and you should be the party that fights for those identities full-throatedly. By the same token, the thing that matters is economics. It's issues of class. And issues of class affects a large swath of the population. You will get far more votes in dealing with issues of class and economics and the disparities in the way that we allocate cash in the society. But they don't do that. They don't do that because if they did that, the policies that these guys will be pushing would adversely affect their donors. Meaning, I'm not going to get that cash if I'm not following a policy position that is advantageous to the people who's giving me the cash. Now, if you were a politician, you would do the exact same thing. You would rationalize, well, I can get small things done, and you would say that this is the system that I have to work in. This is the only way to do politics. I got to get the money from somewhere, and I can't take a position that's going to not, make me lose that cash. 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash.
Yeah.
You don't even have to know the candidates. You don't need to know their policies. You only need to say who had more money. That guy's going to win. And you win 90% of the time. So your politics is ensconced in cash. Usually, it is a politician that's representing that interest. It's usually the politician that's the face of that. That's their job. I need to be the face to get that cash and to do certain policy positions, but I need to be the face of these people who are paying me. So when policies come up, I need to explain why I'm taking this particular policy, despite saying at some point long ago that I was against it. I need to explain why this particular Trans-Pacific Partnership is a great thing for America and the most progressive piece of legislation ever. I need to explain that. You can't explain that. That's a lie. But you will say something politically to make that work. In the Afghanistan papers that came out in the Washington Post, what did they say? When they would report the news, the people would come out and they say, we're making progress. Leon Panetta nearly was killed by a suicide bomber. And immediately after, when asked by reporters, we're making progress. We're making progress. They just lied. They pick and choose information in order to try to give to the public. They made point in the article that they couldn't even tell what the numbers were because they doctored the numbers so much. That was under the Obama administration. Come on. You shouldn't be able to lie like this.
All right, so I need you to do the Klobuchar story now.
Yes, let's do Klobuchar. So
I thought it was Klobuchar.
It could be.
Is it Klobuchar?
Like a shower, like taking a shower.
Sometimes it sounds like you say Klobuchar.
I might be saying Klobuchar.
Klobuchar?
Klobuchar. It's probably Klobuchar. It ends with an AR.
Gets you dragged to the woodshed.
Yeah, she gets dragged to the woodshed. So this...
I've never heard that.
You never heard that expression?
Before. No.
Dragged to the woodshed?
Taken out to the woodshed?
So you've heard that one?
Maybe.
But not dragged to the woodshed.
Well, I kind of don't know the context for taken out to the woodshed.
It's when you're going to take somebody's head off. I gotta save my family. That type of stuff.
You're going to murder
That's
somebody?
when you get the Batman voice, yeah. Or beat the shit out of them, one or the other. In my head, the analogy is dragging the kid out by their ankles. The kid's kicking and screaming, and you're dragging him out to the woodshed to beat the shit out of him because you don't want your wife and the other kids to say anything about it. That's the analogy in my head. Or, dragging the dog out to put a bullet in it because it's for whatever reason. Yeah. But all I'm saying is, whatever analogy you want to make, put your analogy there about something bad that's going to happen is somebody being dragged to that bad end. That bad end is the woodshed. Drag, kicking and screaming, and they don't want to go to the woodshed because they're kicking and screaming to the woodshed.
Okay.
When Jeremy Corbyn got dragged to the woodshed from an election.
Somebody said he thought it was beating in the outhouse.
Now I've never heard beating in the outhouse.
Klobuchar.
Klobuchar. All right. Here's Klobuchar. So Klobuchar was involved.
It's your slang. It's your slang twang.
I have my accent.
You say go ahead.
Klobuchar. So Klobuchar has been bragging about a case that she was involved in where she put a child, in prison. Now, supposedly they thought this child killed somebody. Weak case from get-go. You had people who said, well, that wasn't him. You had bribes that were given to people who were jailhouse informants, and you had bribes that apparently were given to witnesses. This is the case Klobuchar was bragging about. And new questions have been raised as people are thinking, this wasn't the guy. You got the wrong person in prison for this particular case. You put a child in prison wrongly. A certain degree of prosecutorial overreach. And Klobuchar was bragging about that child, potentially innocent, being in prison. She goes on to Chris Wallace. None of the other Democratic candidates would bring that up. Tulsi might have brought that up, but Tulsi wasn't allowed on the debate stage because Tom Perez thought he was going to use a rule set to eliminate all of these other people from the debate, but now allows Bloomberg in. But nevertheless, I'm not bitter about that. Klobuchar, nobody asked her about that. Chris Wallace is asking her about that. Fox News, Chris Wallace, is holding Klobuchar accountable.
Let's see. Somebody said you don't
Prosecutor
have to
for
memorize her
Hennepin
name
County
anyway.
in Minnesota, and your office put a 16-year-old boy in prison for life for the shooting of a young girl. You've campaigned on how this shows that you were tough on crime. But just in the last few days, I want to put this up on the screen, a year-long Associated Press investigation has raised new questions about whether that young man was wrongfully convicted. They found police offered cash to potential witnesses and relied on testimony from jailhouse informants who got reduced sentences. Senator, did you know, when you were the prosecutor, did you know about any of that? And should this man's case be reopened?
Well, justice must be done, Chris. And just to put it in some context, this was an 11-year-old girl named Taisha Edwards. She was...
Stop. Just stop. That doesn't matter. I don't mean to be callous. That doesn't matter. Everything that you're saying here, the age of the girl, the name of the girl, she could have been the sweetest thing on earth. Pumpkin pie. She could have had, I don't know, braids in her hair with, butter cups or something. All I'm saying is, whatever picture, the most beautiful
it doesn't matter.
Scene, doesn't matter. What we're talking about here is this person innocent? The only thing that matters in this conversation is whether or not you put an innocent person in prison. Because if you did, that is a horrible, horrible thing. It's horrible on two accounts. A, you jumped the gun, meaning a certain prosecutorial overreach to get that child put in prison. B, it also means that you've put somebody in a cage for something they did not do, which is...
And they were 16.
And they were 16 when it took place. Yeah, that's... Like, think about that. You're being dragged and put into a fucking cage for something you didn't do and called effectively a murderer. And 3, the murderer is still out there. All 3 of those things are horrible. They're horrible. And so, regardless of what you're saying about this particular child, who I'm pretty sure was pleasant.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Did he kill that child or not?
Did he kill her or not? And if you knew that these people were taking bribes, if you knew that they were using jailhouse informants and getting, some out the deal, if you knew that there were people coming saying it wasn't him, then yeah, that's on you. You need to answer for that.
Yeah. So
we hit Kamala Harris, when she was laughing at pot smokers being put in prison.
Yeah.
This is fucking horrible. Kamala Harris left a man in prison on death row when the judge told her to take him out. This is horrible. She has effectively put a child in prison on weak evidence, and now she's being asked, do you think that's wrong, and do you think this case should be brought back? And instead of answering that question, she goes into talking about
the victim.
That
has nothing to do with the answer.
Here's the catch, Klobuchar. You know who's also a victim? The guy you put in prison, especially if that guy is innocent.
She was doing her homework at her kitchen table, and a bullet went through the wall, and she died. And it was a tragic case. It was a big deal within the African-American community. And our focus was on bringing the people to justice and doing justice for her family. So what happened was 3 people were convicted, if I could just finish.
But Senator, we know, let me just say, we know it was a bad case. The question is whether this young man did it, and this AP investigation indicates that other people who were there said he didn't do it, and that some of the witnesses that were relied on were very questionable. You were the head prosecutor. Did you know? And if you didn't, shouldn't you have known?
There actually were 2 trials in this case, Chris. One was after I had left the office.
But he was convicted in the case when you were the prosecutor.
I know, if I could just answer. My view as someone that has worked with the Innocence Project for years is that if there is new evidence, it must come forward. It must come forward, and it must be considered immediately by the court. The job of a prosecutor is to do justice, and that means to me, convict the guilty, protect.
You're not answering the question. What did you know and when did you know it? That's the question. What did you know and when did you know it?
Was he wrongly convicted? Should it be revisited?
And not just that. Did you know that they were giving witnesses money? Did you know that people said that the guy didn't do it who were actually there? Did you know that jailhouse informants were getting paid off through shortened sentences to give testimony? What did you know? And when did you know it? She hasn't answered that.
No.
I want to hear that answer. I mean, because if Klobuchar says, yes, I knew all of that was taking place. I was the head prosecutor. My job was to try to get a conviction, and we thought this guy was it. If she says that is horrendous.
Her response is essentially, this was really, really bad, and we needed to do something.
Yeah, do something. Somebody
had
had
to put
pay.
somebody in jail to appease the victim's family.
And making, and it misses the point that, look, I know sometimes people, we complain about our justice system in a way, like the way we do trials and everything else. And sometimes there may be criminals, horrible, horrible fucking people who get a lawyer that puts up an amazing case. And everybody in the country may say that motherfucker is guilty. And yet, having his day in court with that adversarial process, he may come out and he may walk. That happens. That's true. But think about the process of you being in court and you didn't do something. And they're accusing you of something that you didn't do. And you're like, how do I get across to these people that I had nothing to do? You can't get it across.
At 16.
At 16, it has nothing to do, per se. Like, I in my head, anybody could get hit with that. This guy did this. The cops proclaim this guy did it. And oftentimes, the moment that the cops take somebody out, people assume that, well, there had to be someone on the guy for the cops to be around the guy.
Yeah.
And you should have a representation that is verbose. Because there will be occasions where they get the wrong person, and the notion of an innocent person being in jail is it's unthinkable to me. I don't want somebody to be dehumanized in that particular way. And so, yeah, I want an adversarial process. I want that person to get a fair shot to clear his name, knowing that there will be some, every so often, that walk. By the same token, there will be a lot more less innocent people in the prison system.
Does she answer it? Is that the end of the
No,
clip?
let's keep going. Let's see if she answers it. Because I'm up to this point, she has dodged that completely.
The innocent.
And not well.
Do your job without fear
But
of favor.
Senator, you're not
And that's
answering
what
my
I've asked
question.
to happen
Senator,
here.
you're not answering
Yeah.
my question.
Okay,
Did you
okay.
know about the fact that there was this questionable evidence that the police were coming up with?
I didn't know about this new evidence. No, I didn't know about this new evidence until I saw this report. I couldn't have. I haven't been in the office for 12 years.
But I was wondering, when you were in the office, did you know about this questionable evidence? The reason I'm asking you is, as I'm sure you well know now, there are a number of African-American groups in Minnesota who are calling for you to suspend your campaign until this is cleared up. And according to national polls, you're below 1% in African-American support. You're not going to win the Democratic nomination if you have such little support from the minority community.
Well, I think what you've seen all across the country is that when people get to know me, I do well. And it's on me. I've got to go out there and get to know people. And in my case, let's look at Iowa. Two prominent African.
She looks awkward in this interview. This is an awkward interview. I think it's awkward because Wallace has a point. Like, I don't care Wallace is a Republican. I don't care that he's on Fox News. Wallace has a point. Nothing he said there was unfair either. Meaning, the whole point of you running for president is for people to figure out who is this quantity. And who that quantity is, in many respects, at the very least from our standpoint, because we can't peer into the individual, is a collection of things that person has done over the course of their life. That's all we got. Now, at some point, we'll get some brain thing and we can look at it on the screen and we can make our choice. But up to this point, that's all we got. If you were in a case and you put a child in prison with questionable evidence and you knew it was questionable at the time, then yeah, there's a problem with your judgment, and what you're willing to do in these kind of nefarious means. You put an innocent man in prison, potentially innocent man in prison. So that matters. That's actually a decent question. And at no point did she answer that particular question. Right. That question actually may be, yes, I knew that they were paying off informants. I knew they were paying off witnesses. I knew we had a questionable case at best, but I pushed through anyway. Like, and this adversely affects African Americans more. African Americans get picked up on shit like 4 times more than whites. And juries have a less... It's just the criminal justice system at its core. It's just...
Fact.
Yeah, especially the people of color. So Klobuchar taking this position of a prosecutor is, she was...
troubling, to say the least.
Yeah, none, thing for me.
Casual Thursday says his mom died, the 16-year-old that was in jail.
That's right. She didn't even let him go to
His mom died trying to see him, and Klobuchar, whatever, wouldn't let him go to her funeral. Yep. I remember seeing that part on there.
I remember that too. I mean, yeah. So
She's disgusting.
Yeah, you're fucking disgusting. And that's fucking horrendous. And prosecutors do that shit all across the United States. What she did, that's not uncommon, unfortunately. And even when they get it wrong, they'll be like, yeah, I'm not going to reopen the case and this type of stuff. Even when evidence starts coming out, because it's a pride thing of, well, I don't want to go to sleep at night thinking I put an innocent person in prison. And then the moment that you start thinking that way, you start questioning other cases and all this other stuff. Yeah. I'm just saying, that is a horrendous fucking thing. I would imagine there's a certain pressure on the justice system to not reveal the people who they're putting in prison who are innocent, because it makes the system look dodgy. Right.
It shows how bad it is.
And the person who's a part of that process probably also has a certain amount of pressure on them to not go with this notion that they could have gotten it wrong. But they do. It's a human element thing. You put a person in a particular environment, that person acts a certain way. But from a moral standpoint, that is utterly atrocious. And I don't want you anywhere near the presidency if you're going to willing to do something like that. That is some cold-blooded shit to put an innocent person in prison. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Marcus Will says, don't mistake anti-Republican, anti-Bush for anti-war.
Yes. There are differences. All right, here's Marcus Will. Michael Moore supported the war on Syria. He was part of the Assad Must Go parade, and now he calls for Tulsi a Russian asset. Fuck him. He called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset? Did Michael Moore do that?
Well, somebody else said, hold on, let me go back read the other one, because somebody else...
Aaron Hampton. There is a recent video of Joe Biden petting a disabled man's face after asking him a question.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Wow.
Jay Wood said, that speech is fire from Michael Moore.
It is.
And blah, 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 but fuck him. Knowing how he treats Tulsi is enough to give him the middle finger. Also, let MSNBC call her a Russian.
Oh, so he didn't do it. He let MSNBC do it. Either way, I feel you. I agree with you. Is there
another one?
I agree with you. I mean, yeah. I want to say fuck Michael Moore, but that speech was on fire. There is a recent... read that one. The buying the race argument is flawed. Steyer is moving in the polls because he's backing a black agenda in reparations. Every candidate must spend money to get their message out, but that message doesn't appeal. It won't matter how much money they spend. I don't buy.
Yeah, no.
I don't buy that. Like, if you're swamping the airwaves... I mean... Bloomberg just got into this race. Nobody was clamoring for Bloomberg. The only thing Bloomberg did was drop $250 million of ads putting out a position. That's literally what Bloomberg did, but that's also what Tom Steyer did. You could put out an ad putting out certain positions that you think that people may go for, but how are you putting out that ad in the first place if you don't have $250 million to do it? My point is, it's a megaphone. It's one of those things where you can sit and just scream and drown out the airwaves with a particular message that may appeal to a certain group. But the fact that you have money to even do that is kind of the point that we're making. It's buying a position. Yes, you can find a favorable position and you can scream about that specific favorable position. Fair enough. Let's say it's reparations. Tom Steyer, how much money did he spend in those states? And would the other campaigns be able to match him in spending in those states? The answer is no. Tom Steyer is a billionaire. He spent $150 million up to this point.
Yeah.
Drowning out everybody else. So, it's not so much that I think that the support is fictitious. My issue is more so that the support is grown through purely means of cash. Look, any candidate can put out a message that they think may appeal to a particular group, and they can blast that message with a megaphone. But the amount of cash you have is going to be determinative to how much that message gets out and how much it drowns out the other message that are around. You could put out hit videos, you could have attacking videos, you could have all of that stuff and effectively drown out your opposition and going through it.
And you mentioned Steyer as an example, but look at Bloomberg.
Yeah, Bloomberg is worse.
His campaign? Like, what is his platform?
He's been talking about gun rights and stuff like that. Yeah, I disagree with you on this one, Aaron Hampton.
No,
I'm sorry, Kills for a Living. I disagree with you on that one, Kills for a Living.
Okay, so somebody, their name is literally 2 question marks, says John Kerry was overheard discussing a possible 2020 bid. Oh, for fuck's sake.
When?
I don't know. Isn't there enough chaos?
John Kerry is not going to get in this race. John Kerry would not get in this race.
All right, so that's all for Super Chats. We're over 500. Woohoo! Got 509 people here, guys. If you are enjoying the content, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Adam Bell said, Kerry's still alive?
Kerry, He's looking rough. He had to laugh at Joe Biden. He was looking rough making that lie. Because they were talking about the Iraq war vote, and Curry got up there. It was like, well, I mean, Joe Biden, and mumbled his way to some kind of answer. So,
oh wait, let me go to the Patreon ones before we go. Fred Aggs says, never forget that Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar were the superdelegates from Minnesota who betrayed their state and voted for Hillary when the state voted for Bernie. And Klobuchar talks about unity. Second, can you remind me what was the deal in Nevada in 2016 with the rigging?
All right, so in 2016, they had the original vote. Nevada has a weird process. It's like a 3-layer process. But Nevada has a vote. Now, keep in mind, the thing that matters is the number of delegates. And the delegates are the ones who essentially affect the will of that particular candidate to make the vote for that candidate. It's not exactly a direct vote. So on the first direct vote, I think Hillary moderately won, meaning she would end up with more delegates than Sanders. The Hillary supporters apparently didn't come out to the second process, in which case Sanders ended up with more delegates than the Hillary supporters. Now, it wasn't by much. I think it was by 1 or 2. So when they finally got to the last election to, make the final tally, it should have came out with Sanders winning in delegates because those delegates are the ones that showed up. They started creating processes to stop the Sanders supporters from getting in, meaning the Sanders delegates from getting into the place in order to make their vote. When they finally got in and they made their vote, they had a hand vote, like a kind of a yay nay vote. They said they went with that vote, even though it was almost a mixed audience. And what they said, Sanders, Biden, and then they said, all right, Hillary Clinton gets it. And the Sanders was like, what? How are you doing that vote? How are you making this tally? There are more of us than them, and you're still going with this notion that the vote, there was no way for you to determine a yay or nay with that many people in that were split. So the fact that you're calling that in and of itself is dodgy.
Yeah.
And then you immediately say that the Clinton wins and walks out. Sanders supporters were pissed off. They were screaming. They were yelling. The Clinton Clinton supporters came back and said, they're flipping chairs. Yeah. They're flipping chairs. No video emerged of them flipping chairs. That was a lie.
But if they had been, it would have been warranted.
It would have, to some degree, been warranted. They were cheated out of their delegates. And to make it worse, the media picked up on this notion that, Sanders supporters were unruly and they were throwing chairs. My boss, when I got to work that day, he was like, you guys need to get that shit together. He knows I'm a Bernie supporter, and he's like, you guys need to calm down in the voting thing. I was like, Mitch, that never happened.
Yeah.
I said, it never happened. It never happened. And so that always aggravates me because that's the same argument they're using this year, talking about Sanders people are unruly and divisive and everything else. That's why I keep saying don't play into that nonsense by making apologies and whatnot. But that's what happened in Nevada. They stole it from them in Nevada.
Fred said, Nevada better have a plan for that. They should have been flipping bodies.
Oh, wow.
That's aggressive.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
Marcus Will says, I'm watching you on 3 devices. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Wow. Marcus. Thanks, Mark.
All right, so I have another one.
Go for it.
From Patreon. Vortex, we touched on this before, but Vortex says, can you discuss how we can mitigate or respond to corporate Dems cheating the IO account via that unknown cell phone reporting app?
Yeah.
That cell phone vote app.
See, that's the catch, right? A lot of this has to do with Sanders. Like, it's one of those things like, say you work somewhere and, God, this would be a better example. Yeah, this is a good example. Let's say you work somewhere, and let's say it's a studio. And let's say in that studio, there's a person who works for, let's say, 5 hours, a long period of time. And when other things come up, they continuously pile work on that person. Another show goes in, and now he's working like 8 hours without a break. Now, you work 4 hours or 5 and you leave. Many of the other people do the same, including people who work the exact same job that he does. You notice that. Can you go to the boss and say, hey, this guy is being overworked. He's going to start making mistakes and you're going to attack him for it. And we need to, you should do something to deal with, making less hours and making other people carry the burden. Can you, as a random person, go and do that? Probably not. Meaning, Sanders supporters can bitch, they can moan, they can yell, they can scream, they can point, they can say, hey, there's a problem with that. That looks dodgy. We think they're going to cheat him with that. But none of that matters if the candidate himself doesn't say it. if Michael Moore is not up there saying, yeah, I don't want this app, I want a hand vote. If Sanders is not saying, I want a hand vote. If Nina Turner is saying, I want a hand vote, then it's not going to happen. Like, if they're not challenging the electoral process, then it's not going to happen. They should have never accepted this notion of them use paper ballots. Should have been what they wanted. They should have screamed and argued and bitched for paper ballots. This is your opportunity to potentially be the president of the United States, and you're letting a device that you don't own, that you don't control, tally up votes. No, that shouldn't. Paper ballots.
They said they've already tested it, and they put it on 5 phones, and it wasn't working, or it's already not working.
That's kind of my point. If you were the Sanders camp, why wouldn't you say, I want paper ballots? I want a fair contest. I want a fair, transparent process. And push for that. Like, this is kind of the point that I'm making here when I say Sanders doesn't, I don't know if he just doesn't get that, if he thinks that there's going to be too much flack from that, from saying that, wait a minute, I don't trust this process. I don't know what he's thinking. But there's a problem with that. And if somebody should be in his camp saying, look, over the last election in 2016, the exit vote totals wasn't matching the vote totals by a large margin, and that margin always went to Clinton. There's a problem with that, and we need to make sure that there is no electronic fuckery to cheat us. That meeting should have been had. That meeting should have been had. And so the moment that Iowa said they were going to do this, they should have been screaming to the hilt that they want paper ballots. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that. I don't know why they didn't do that. And us screaming and bitching about it, I don't know how we organize to put pressure on that. And, what does it mean to organize and put pressure on that? Who do you put pressure on? What are you going to put pressure? How are you going to hit? What's the point where you can put your thumb and you can, make the person holler? I don't know what that is without the campaign themselves saying something about it. You can have, I suppose, like outside groups or something that kind of aggregate together. But again, you still are stuck with, how do you hit them in a way?
Bernie needs to say it.
Sanders needs to say it.
Come from the horse's mouth.
Yes.
No offense.
It just does.
Jason Michael Fears says, can you talk about the Des Moines Register poll and the piece the New York Times did about how the Mayor Pete campaign got it shelved?
So I only saw the inside of that part. Meaning I saw that they shut the polling down. And I read the article that came with them shutting the polling down when it was announced, and their reason for why.
Apparently Pete's guys said because he was excluded.
Correct. And so on the poll, on that article, they made the point that one of the respondents was not being used in the questioning. And because we've been doing this for like 76 years, we didn't want accuracy, and we want to be respected as a polling agency. And so we're going to scuttle this poll. That's basically what they said. They said one of the respondents, apparently Pete Buttigieg, was missing in some of the questioning, and they thought it was unfair results, or that the results was going to be skewed. Even if the results were skewed by a small margin, they said, we didn't want to take the chance. We want the poll to be top standard, so we're not going to release the poll. The question is, how did Buttigieg know that he wasn't one of the respondents in the question? Did they submit that poll to the campaigns early before they released it? I mean, that's a fair question, right? Yeah. I mean, because otherwise, how would Buttigieg know? Say, for example, I'm going to do a poll in my house, and I'm going to, call out 1,000 people. How does any of the campaigns know that I'm doing that? How would they know what the results are, and how would they know what the questions I've asked were, unless I've submitted it to the campaigns in advance? Now, maybe they submitted the format of what they were going to ask in advance, and maybe not the polling itself. Does that make sense? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that the campaigns got the actual poll. They might have just gotten questions that were going to be asked to people when they were in the polling. Meaning Buttigieg might have saw that he wasn't in the question sample and complained about it. The question is, when did they get the format? And when did Buttigieg complain? Did he wait a week, 2 weeks? I don't know. I mean, if I'm Buttigieg, I would probably do the same thing. It's a campaign.
Yeah.
And, those results might have been pretty bad. Buttigieg might have been getting bullied in Iowa.
All right, Lloyd Tucker says, so we were talking about how to election integrity and this cell phone app crap.
Yeah.
Lloyd Tucker says, stop all contributions until Bernie speaks up. Talking about the purple ballots, the paper ballots.
Unfortunately, that's a worst case scenario. And understand what I mean. It's one of those things where it's like he needs to say something about it, and pressure needs to be applied to him to say something about it. But cutting donations effectively weakens the guy who's your best shot at getting your policy proposals, put into reality. So it's like, do you take the chance of hurting him when he's running in the race with two billionaires? I don't see it that way. I mean, there has to be some other way to kind of get it across. And maybe he may even think to himself, I can't attack the electoral system because if I do, they're going to say that he's trying to come up with an excuse for cheap, maybe he's thinking of the narratives that will be used against him if he tries to do something like that. He might even say, people make an argument, oh, he's like Trump who's attacking the electoral system just in case he loses. They've had this consistent drumbeat of unruly, divisive, aggressive, that type of stuff. And so it's like making an argument about it may fall into this notion that Bernie Sanders is trying to lead a crowd against our electoral system if he loses. So I don't know what he's thinking, but I do strongly believe they should have been pushing for paper ballots as one of the criteria in any change to the electoral system.
Jay Wood says, if Sanders gets cheated this time, I'm putting on my Red Hood mask and I'm going rogue. He says, when you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable.
That's a quote. He's not saying that. He's.
I know that. It was in quotes.
Oh, okay.
You couldn't see that. Sorry. I should have.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, he's right. I mean, when I ask people, like, well, what do you want to do? Or Look, if they cheat Sanders, the Democratic Party is over. I strongly believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, because all of the claims of the cheating of Sanders in 2016, which is a narrative that was set by lefties and that I think a great part of the population believed and realized was true. And if you do it again in 2020, you've not just solidified the first narrative that you were complaining about. You've made it that much more clear that there is no home for lefties in this race. You would only support a candidate if that candidate was part of your established order. And if that candidate is not, you don't support him. While at the same token, going at lefties and wagging your finger that you should support Hillary Clinton. Meaning you're all in when it's somebody who you have some establishment corporate Democrat. The moment that person is not an establishment corporate Democrat, now they have qualms. For 40 fucking years, they've said you have nowhere else to go, bow your head and vote for this crook. Yes, you can take a shower afterwards to get the stink off of you, but you need to vote for this person because he's least worse. For 40 years. Incrementalism is the greatest thing ever. For 40 years. They've put this in people's heads on what they consider to be electable or not. And now you have a situation where everything that they said was a lie. You can run campaigns if you're dealing with people's materialistic needs and those people think that they're going to get something out of it by voting for that person. Or they think that person is the best person for the job. Have a different vision of what government is and what we as society are. Our interconnectedness. They said it was impossible to run that way. He's running that way. And God knows if he wins that way, it shows that all of this stuff was just propaganda in order to maintain a certain established order of third-wave Democrats that were effectively just corporate Democrats, where the New Deal, screw that New Deal stuff, but still talking the language of that New Deal, despite not having the ethics and integrity that was built into that project. Joe Biden was talking about cutting Social Security. He's a Democrat. Put that in perspective. Al Gore lost. John Kerry lost. Hillary Clinton lost. And we're going to expect a different result with the Joe Biden, who is effectively a more senile version of Hillary Clinton. I don't think so.
Marcus Will says Bernie needs to speak out. There's no two ways about it.
He should. But the problem is he should have been speaking out months ago. Paper ballots. The moment that he saw that those numbers being skewed that way, he should have been calling for paper ballots. Honestly, it doesn't have to be high tech. Because high tech allows all sorts of fuckery where you can get within the context of the computer and those type of things. It should be just very basic. You have people count the ballots. That's all. Keep it simple. This is the issue of trust, right? I mean, I don't trust the party to be fair and impartial in this process. I have every reason to not trust the party to be fair and impartial in this process. So people on my side of the fence say, we want paper ballots because we want to know that this process is fair and transparent. How is that unreasonable as a request? And yet, they don't make it. And keep in mind, these are the same people who have been screaming about the Russians hacking them. It's like, come on. All right.
We done.
One more story, and we can call it a day. Rand Paul. Let's do this one because I want this one cut. So, the impeachment hearing is coming to an end at this point. They are pushing the final vote of impeachment to Wednesday. Now, the catch is the Democrats don't have enough votes to call witnesses, meaning the impeachment is effectively going to end. Ted Cruz has made the point that, look, if we're going to call witnesses, we're calling Hunter Biden and possibly Joe Biden. Fair enough. But the Democrats are bitching that, this wasn't a trial because we couldn't call witnesses. No, it was a trial. You impeached him in the House. You couldn't impeach him in the Senate. You don't control the Senate. Too bad for you. Not to mention the American public will likely get a choice coming up in November. And with that choice, that American public could look at what you've done here and approve, in which case they would say, okay, yeah, I think he should have been impeached, so I'm going to remove him. Or they can disapprove and say, yeah, this doesn't reach the level of impeachment for me, so I'm going to vote on some other matter that matters to me more, like my material needs. But you're trying to find a loophole. And you've made the argument that the public themselves should not be able to vote for Donald Trump in November. That is an astonishing argument. Not to mention a few of the lies that Schiff have been making. This is coming to a head, apparently, on Wednesday. And they're going to vote to either convict Trump and remove him from office or to acquit Trump. And Trump is going to get on the loudest microphone he could find and his Twitter account at the exact same time. And he's going to scream, not guilty. You came at me with a conspiracy theory for 3 years. Nothing to see here, folks. And now you immediately flipped over from a leaker from the CIA, literally from the CIA, who overheard a conversation and use that as a measure of impeachment. And not just that, it's an overreach of power and obstruction of justice. Why the obstruction of justice? Because Donald Trump didn't want to work with the Democrats, a partisan operation with many of them saying from get-go, I'm going to impeach this motherfucker. Because Trump didn't work with that partisan hackery that was going on in the Democratic Party, that he was somehow obstructing justice. Nonsense. I wouldn't have worked with you either. I would have been antagonistic to you also. You are partisan hacks that have been trying to get him out of office and not accepting the election results for the last 3 years. He has every right to not participate in that process. But they're calling that obstruction of justice. But their biggest charge is that they're bleeding hearts for the Ukraine. They've made this they've been out there saying these lunatic phrases. We got to fight the Russians over there so we don't fight them over here. We're not fighting the Russians. Ukraine is in the middle of a civil war. Russia is backing one side of that. The United States is backing another side of that, while Ukraine themselves are trying to reunify and been having talks to reunification. Whether the United States allows that or not is unknown. They have Nazis, in some cases, walking through the streets having flag burning ceremonies because that's part of the military in the Ukraine, at least on the side that the United States is backing. They keep saying that Vladimir Putin ripped away the Crimea. The Crimea made a vote to leave. They didn't necessarily like the Nazis walking through the streets. Like, the way we talk about this here is so weird. Obama didn't send weapons to the Ukraine because he didn't want to antagonize Russia. The United States was instrumental in that coup that created that civil war. The U.S. and some of the Western allies are trying to force them into a deal put them in the sphere of NATO for all intents and purposes. All I'm saying is the deal was untenable, meaning they couldn't make that vote if he wanted to make that vote. The country splits. U.S. backs one side, and of course, in its civil war. Obama would not give weapons because he didn't want to antagonize the Russians. Trump gets in office, holds weapons, and they're like, oh my God, the Ukrainians are dying. Donald Trump is not giving them weapons. They flip out over something that Obama wouldn't even do. So Trump sends the weapons because he doesn't want to look like he's in the pocket of Vladimir Putin, because that's what they keep saying. So he sends the weapons. He does something that Obama doesn't do. He sends offensive weapons. Effectively, those weapons can now be used to kill Russians. Is that provocative or not? That's provocative. But that's not the way the conversation goes. The conversation only goes, Trump wasn't supporting our Ukrainian allies. Period. Yeah. And he was helping Vladimir Putin, all of these Ukrainian, etc. Like Ukrainian, or Ukraine is like the 51st state. It's fucking insane. So we have a hypothesis on who the leaker is. And Adam Schiff keeps saying he doesn't know who the guy is. Adam Schiff is lying. Adam Schiff does know who the guy is. It's called Eric Chermella, something to that effect. But no network would say that name. None of the networks brings him up, Eric Chermella. That's the leaker who supposedly overheard the conversation that somebody else was talking. The guy works in the CIA. Now think back to all of the whistleblowers that you know. Edward Snowden. You could say to some degree Julian Assange. Chelsea Manning. Think of all of these whistleblowers. Kariakou. What was their life like after they blew the whistle?
Not good.
Edward Snowden moved to Russia. Julian Assange spent time in effectively isolation and then prison. Chelsea Manning was tortured in a military prison after revealing that we killed a Reuters agent and a copter who didn't necessarily know who they were murdering. 90% of many of the deaths over there were civilians. Put that in perspective. Like the amount of people that we were killing over there, they always lowball the numbers, but the reality was much, much higher. My point is, whistleblowers don't get support from party establishment or the intelligence establishment. They don't live decent lives. They don't have their identities protected and hidden. Oftentimes, their whistleblowing is going against the grain in regards to what the establishment wants. When you're revealing that, hey, there's mass surveillance, and they try to go against the guy who's revealing it, despite mass surveillance being against the law, that gives you this notion of how whistleblowers are enacted with. This guy doesn't feel like a whistleblower to me when the intelligence services are coming out and the Democratic Party is coming out trying to throw their bodies on the guy.
Yeah.
I tell you this, they didn't act like that during Obama. When Obama was putting people in prison using the Espionage Act, I didn't hear a peep from any Democrat. Not a single Democrat said a thing. Rand Paul was in the impeachment hearing, and Rand Paul wants to ask a question. Now, during the impeachment hearing, during this phase, the senators can submit questions to be asked. Rand Paul's question brought up the name of Eric Chermella without saying that he was the whistleblower. Now, Fox and all of these other networks are refusing to say this guy's name. But the name is important because shouldn't you know who your accuser is? You have somebody who's from the shadows, and I want to know, what is his motivation? Is he associated with the Democratic Party in this case? Meaning, if he has ties to Schiff and some kind of like Joe Biden's campaign or what he's on the campaigns, that should be part of the record in regards to his motivation and his reasoning for doing what he did. Yeah. Do you think they would have done this for Obama? Probably not. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have said, I don't believe for a moment this would have leaked under Obama. And again, Obama has been using the Espionage Act to put people like that in prison. If this was under Obama, that guy would be in a cell right now. And not a Democrat would say a peep. None of them would say a thing. Let's hear Rand Paul. Because Rand Paul is a right-winger, but he does have an ideological base that he sticks to. This is one of them.
Paul was the first going that up. Here he comes.
As you may have noticed, we had something slightly atypical downstairs. I asked a question, and the question was refused. Now, it's been reported that this question's about this or about that, and it's been refused for one reason or another. I can tell you that my question made no reference to any whistleblower or any kind of person, a complainant from a whistleblower. But I will read you the question so it can be made part of the public record. Manager Schiff and Counsel for the President, are you aware that House Intelligence Committee staffer Sean Misko has a close relationship with Eric Chermella when at the National Security Council together? Are you aware, and how do you respond to reports that Chermella and Misko may have worked together to plot impeaching the president before there were formal House impeachment proceedings? I think this is an important question, one that deserves to be asked. It makes no reference to anybody who may or may not be a whistleblower. The manager Schiff says he has no knowledge. If he has no knowledge, the rest of us can have no knowledge of who the whistleblower is. The president's team says they have...
Wait, that's important. That's important. Let me repeat effectively what he said. If nobody knows who the whistleblower is, meaning they keep saying, he's anonymous, we don't want to tell who he is. If nobody knows, if Adam Schiff indeed does not know who the whistleblower is, then me mentioning a random name Because I don't know, you don't know, nobody else said they know. Yeah. The Democrats said they don't know who he is. So me putting in this random name without naming the person as the whistleblower or even implying such, why should that be offensive? Or why should that be wrong? But John Roberts rejected his question. John Roberts was like, yep, I'm not answering that. And it's like, how are you not asking this question? I'm a senator, a representative of my state from the American public, and I am asking a question that doesn't break any rules. There's no law that says you can't ask that question. And you're going to censor that question?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? So anybody that people suspect as a whistleblower, you just can't say their name now? Well, I mean, what the fuck? He's asking a basic question of, look, the identity of this person, do we know that these people had some association with the Democratic Party? Basically, he's asking a question around the guy. Now, what this does, though, is allow Trump to come out, and it gives him leeway to say something about Rand Paul, because Trump and Rand Paul, they interacted at times. But Trump can now come out and make the point that says, I can't believe they didn't let Rand Paul ask that question about Eric Jamello, who they keep calling the whistleblower. Like, he can do that now, almost just based on this. But I'm bothered by this for some reason. He should be able to ask that question. That question is not a foul. Let's listen to it again. I mean, he's not outing the guy, even though to some degree he is outing the guy. But I am bothered by this notion that you can have an anonymous person attack the president. And think about what this means from the standpoint of conversations. You're talking to a leader of another country, and they're exposing a private conversation between those leaders into public record. Now, what does it look like when you're trying to speak to these other leaders and they know that because of the political system in the United States, these conversations may not remain private? I mean, I don't, look, it's not me saying, yes, I want Donald Trump going to Ukrainians or to get information, to hit the Democratic Party. By the same token, if there is information there that they did something, I am okay with that coming out. But I don't want this to be used for political ends where they just hit his opponent. Yeah. I think that's massively unfair. And he should be hit on the knuckles for that. So fair enough. But you have an election in a year. And the public can look at your, censure. It can look at you hit him on the knuckles. It can look at all of that and make a choice and say, yeah, they were right to censure him. He had no business doing that. And I want to get his ass out of office. Or they can say, that doesn't meet the standard for me to remove him from office. Other things matter more. But they don't even give the public a choice on this. There's a fascistic element of this where they're like, we don't want you to get your vote. We don't want you to get your vote. Meaning you could vote for somebody, but we don't want you to be able to vote for him. That's qualms for me. I have serious qualms about that. Especially when Hillary Clinton buys a dossier from a Brit who went to get information from some Russians or something, talking about Trump and Russia, Trump got peed on and all this other stuff. Hillary Clinton did that. When they asked the representative, why is there a difference between what you're accusing Donald Trump of with Trump and Russia versus the Hillary Clinton stuff, they said, well, Hillary paid for it. Hillary paid for it. That's the difference. You can get foreign sources from a foreign government to attack your opponent if you pay for it. That made it okay. Well, Mueller said that didn't happen, but she did pay for it, meaning she was paying for it, what you're accusing him of.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this stuff has been astonishing in the way the media would run this. The notion that Hillary Clinton could do that, but they're looking at Trump saying Trump did that, but Trump is the one that ran afoul of this. When you're like, well, wait a minute, what the fuck? She's doing the exact same thing. And then you find out that the Democrats were working with the Ukrainians in order to get information to hit Manafort. Like, the narratives that the media has put out has been atrocious on this, and they have gone decidedly against Trump. I want to hear Rand Paul one more time in the question that he asked.
They have no knowledge of who the whistleblower is. Before there were formal House impeachment proceedings. I think this is an important question, one that deserves to be asked. It makes no reference to anybody made part of the public record. Manager Schiff and counsel for the president, are you aware that House Intelligence Committee staffer Sean Misko has a close relationship with Eric Ciaramella when at the National Security Council together? Are you aware, and how do you respond to reports that Ciaramella and Misko may have worked together to plot impeaching the president before there were formal House impeachment proceedings? I think this is an important question.
I don't see the problem with that question. I just don't. Now, you can make the case to say, well, wait a minute, it implies something. I mean, there's a context to it, right? We're in an impeachment hearing, and in the impeachment hearing, we know that there was a whistleblower of some sort, and you're asking a question that doesn't say really anything about impeachment in a direct way, but you're bringing up two names. Rationally, those two names has to correlate to impeachment, otherwise you wouldn't bring the two names up.
Right.
So how do these two names apply to the impeachment? Like, you can do that, I suppose, and come away with saying, yeah, I don't want to touch that. I don't even want to bring the name up into the public record. But a senator just asked the question. How do you censor that?
Just ignore it.
Yeah, how do you just ignore that? Especially if what he's saying is true. If what he's saying is true, that the person who was the leaker essentially was plotting to try to find something to take down the president of the United States in advance of this. I hope you understand what I mean. Like, it's getting across that this wasn't, oh, I overheard this and here it is, I'm just doing my duty for, the country. No, it's a concerted effort using his position to get information to ding and take down the president. And the Democratic Party ran with it, with this notion of impeachment. Like, it's almost a coordinated effort between the intelligence side and the Democratic Party. Again, because that's all Russiagate was.
Yeah.
So, I'm astonished by this. They just was like, yeah, we don't want to hear that question. So I'm glad he came out and explained what the question was and put it on the public record. We were talking to Margaret Kimberly. Margaret Kimberly was like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable with them outing the name. And she made reference to a law about it. And Lee was making the point that there is no law about outing that guy. He's not a whistleblower in the traditional sense of the whistleblower. He's a leaker. He's somebody who's in an organization, the CIA, that effectively released information to hit the president. Now, if this was Obama would have put this man in prison and nobody would have said anything. But because it's Trump, they rally around him and protect him. Again, I ask you, think back through time. Name one whistleblower that has ever been treated in this way. And if you can't name one whistleblower that's been treated in this way, maybe the guy is not a whistleblower. That's all I'm getting at. Like Kiriakou was dragged through the mud for revealing the torture program. That's something substantial. Oh my God, we're doing this to people. It wasn't the fact that we were torturing that was against the law. He was the problem, and they put him in prison. If Trump went to put this guy in prison, what would happen? Exactly. They flipped the fuck out.
Xavier Foster says the whistleblower works for Brennan as CIA and Biden.
Yes. That's my point. His motives matter. Who he is matters. You've effectively accused somebody of something without allowing the accuser to be examined. I mean, come on. This is not a fair process. I don't care that it's Donald Trump. I honestly don't care it's Donald Trump. They could do this to your guy also. This has everything to do with process for me. I want a fair process. I can't trust the parties themselves to have a fair contest. And I don't even want the parties themselves to be able to run elections at all. But you still end up with a system where even the people who are running are going to be Democrats or Republicans. They're still going to have an ideology about them. The process needs to be transparent for people to believe the process. Paper ballots is the only way you're going to get there. You're not going to have an electrical system that people are going to believe. People are going to think it could be gamed. Whatever that percentage is, that percentage will be there. You would want an electoral process where people think this is a fair process. At the very least, when people cast their votes. Sure. Rand Paul, man. What do you think is going to happen in the next term if a Democrat wins? What do you think Republicans are going to do? Yeah. That's exactly what they're going to do. That's exactly what they're going to do. Meaning, when Obama couldn't get his Supreme Court pick through, and, Democrats bitched and moaned, weakness being displayed all throughout the television sets with a milquetoast Merrick Garland, who would have been perfectly acceptable 4 or 8 years ago, now being held up and not allowed to take his seat. Democrats get in. Hillary Clinton goes on her book and screams Trump and Russia to absolve herself from all the blames and the failures that she encountered during the course of her race. And screaming Trump and Russia, the mainstream media jumped on this. Woo, this is a good story. This is a great story. We're going to make a ton of cash on this. And the Democrats who firmly believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that race because of the bubble they were living in and the air that they were breathing, they didn't know, or they looked for an excuse to why she lost, as opposed to her just failing. They didn't point to Republicans gaming the edges in regards to the various states. They didn't point to that at all. They didn't report the voting rights legislation where these guys are putting in voting laws to try to dampen down support for minorities. They didn't bother that at all. They didn't bother Operation Crosscheck where they could knock people off the voter rolls. They didn't touch the Republicans. They went to the goddamn Russians. And they said the Russians were responsible for getting Donald Trump in office. They effectively jumped to a conspiracy theory as opposed to dealing with the real tangible problems in an electoral system that gets gamed constantly, year after year. I mean, come on. This is the same thing as Trump is doing with the Hispanics. Instead, Democrats are doing it with the Russians. It's always somebody else's fault. It's not problems and fucked up incentives that are going on within the context of this country. It's always up there. It's out there. Something else. Like, it's not something else. It's your problem. We have fucked up incentives in the way that we run our campaigns. And even, like, when they wanted to get a recount, they tried to charge thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to create a disincentive on getting a recount.
Right.
Shouldn't you want to know who won? For fuck's sake. Shouldn't that be one of the most paramount things, to know who actually won the contest and not have people walking away thinking the contest was gamed? You delegitimize your own processes when that happens. That's why you have so many people now who are pointing to the election saying, I don't trust that device that these guys are using. I don't trust those voting machines. They shouldn't. Paper ballots. Paper ballots, man. All right. I'm going to end this because I'm beginning to drag ass. Guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I always enjoy these. I think they're fun and it allows me to get back with the audience. Marcus Will, more support. Oh,
we
okay.
read that.
We read
I
that
just
one.
wanted to make sure.
But yeah, tomorrow is Iowa. I'm going to try to cover the Iowa thing. I have treatment tomorrow. I can't ignore that one. So I will try to get back soon enough or early enough where I can try to cover the remaining results in Iowa. I am hoping for a blowout. Fingers crossed. Entirely feeling the burn. And hopefully,
Knock it out the park.
because look, if he wins Iowa, it creates a momentum going into New Hampshire, which is just the next week. So, typically I've read somewhere, I heard somewhere that a win in Iowa reverberates for the next several weeks, going out to like Nevada. Keep in mind, I make this point again. African American support boils down to Joe Biden was working with Obama. He has the, Obama legacy on him, that type of stuff. And B, this notion of his electability. Now, if you can show that somebody else is just as electable, meaning who keeps the monsters at bay? What's the guy that's going to keep the monsters at bay? If it's that guy, the guy getting my vote. Well, once you determine that there are more people that can keep the monsters at bay, and not just more people, that the other person that can keep the monsters at bay don't have some of the weaknesses that the other guy had, didn't have some positions that the other guy had that you find to be questionable, and has more policies that are better for you materialistically. The moment that happens, that Joe Biden loses. The catch here is, if Sanders starts winning these states, it may come a point where they look and say, he's a legitimate candidate. The catch here is, for the last 40 years, they've told you that he was not. And so for Sanders to rise up in this point where people look and say, holy shit, he could win this. The very fact that media started to do that changed something. I know it sounds like almost immaterial, but the perspective of media in this case, from we're going to ignore him to, okay, he's a nuisance, to, okay, fuck, he can win this, affects the audience who's watching that, who looks at them and says, and almost gives them permission to go and vote for Bernie. I know people can sometimes be sheeple in this stuff. And sometimes they lump themselves into the other candidate. And they may get into their head, Sanders can't win because they're running with the methodology that, propaganda for the past few years. And then you have a situation where media turns and says, oh, fuck, he can win. The Democrats are terrified that he can win. And you have a lot of people who want to say, fuck the Democratic Party. Was like, yes, maybe he can win. I'm going with that guy. You have a lot of African Americans. I was like, maybe that guy could win. Because they're looking at media and being influenced by media in this case. That's why the turn is important for them to make that switch from he can't win to, okay, he could win, but that type of stuff. So he's fighting his way in that contest. And he's been able to fight his way to the degree of getting, even and exceeding Biden in these early states, in big states like California. So now people are looking at this like, maybe this guy can win.
Okay, I thought we were gonna end this.
We are. But I'm just making a point. That's very important for that change to take place. None of the points of view were real per se. All of the points of view was just their point of view, even though for them it felt solid and real and everything else. When that point of view changes, like a light switch going where all of a sudden something that was impermissible is now permissible because they think this guy can win. Nothing fundamentally has changed there with the exception of their point of view, but the change in the point of view changes their vote potentially. It's important. So, Sanders, fingers crossed for tomorrow.
Okay.
We're going to end this here.
Go watch the Super Bowl if that's your thing.
What time does this come on?
6:30.
So now.
It comes on in like 40 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the clock wrong. No, I'm sorry.
Fast.
Yeah, the clock is wrong. Wait a minute. Yeah, that clock is way off.
No, it's right. Wait. No, it's right.
No, it's 10 minutes. And mine is...
a couple
that's right.
minutes,
5:10.
yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Emphasis on share this video. I mean, we're going to have to break this up into segments. But I really do appreciate you guys coming out. I really do appreciate you guys supporting the content. When I say this content is brought to you by you, we actually do mean it. YouTube demonetizes videos as soon as they go up, and you have to kind of go back and try to get them to remonetize it. It is a pain in the ass, and it cuts revenue. I've heard all these other people complain about it too, especially larger channels where they might have like 100,000 viewers up front, and then the video's demonetized. You know, that type of stuff. But no, guys, this content really is brought to you by you. One of the things I'm excited about is that everything that goes on the channel at the radio station is going to come through here. So you'd be able to see Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. You'd be able to call in and everything else and interact with the show. This show is still going to be going on after the radio show. So there's still going to be videos coming from my regular channel. This is just kind of, I guess you can say, added stable content. But that's going to be in a radio format. Me and my regular show will still be coming on in the evenings and 2 in the mornings and 1 in the morning and 6 a.m. and pop it in like I typically pop in. Thank you all for your support, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Be safe.
Good
and
night.
I will see you tomorrow.
Good night.
Hashtag Bernie 2020.
Bongs for Bernie. Oh.
Bongs for Bernie is a good one. But no, it has to be something like bongs on the White House. No, it's too long.
Bongs for Bernie, like I said.
Burn it up on lawn. Burn it on the White House
Blaze
lawn.
for Bernie.
Blaze for Bernie. Maybe that's it. Blaze for Bernie. We're going to run a thing to try to get Sanders to take a bong hit after the legislation is passed on the White House lawn.
No, we aren't.
Think of the exclamation point.
Good night.
That's like a...
Good night.
That's like a stamp.
Good night.
Have a good night.